Yeah, Mr. Robot, as what he calls himself. So we have a lot of opportunity there as well. And then agentic AI, if you look at today, there is a lot of emphasis on the new form of AI, the agentic AI, a lot of aspects over there. So if you look at, and the last one is the immersive AR. So going to the automotive, the primary focus here is towards where exactly the human can be influenced. So if you look at today, there are a lot of use of gestures and voice, then multi-information displays coming into picture, and of course safety aspects with things like the drowsiness detection being embedded in cars. Even in the lower end cars, we have many of these functionalities. Becomes very important to look at these designs, and developing these, we need to have the infra suitable for developing these. Similarly, from the assistive technologies perspective, various forms and form factors of robots and various types of robots, helper robots coming into picture, multimodal aspects take a crucial this one. So if the robot is actually being assistive, the way human communicates with the gestures, body language and all that. So we need to have all the data that has to be generated for these natural interactions to be made available, which is where the infra plays a crucial role. Of course, brainwaves for assistive technologies for people with special abilities, then assistive robots in industries and homes as well. Now coming to the agentic AI, personal assistants for productivity. So you look at today, a lot of activity is happening in terms of using text and voice predominantly in many cases, many conversational aspects. So this takes huge amount of interest again. Then creative art, music and visual arts again have a lot of analysis that needs to be done from the user perspective. Healthcare, of course, as you know, is very important. And the most important today these days is we are having new devices coming in. If you look at today in the market, we have around 150 plus glass devices. So the HMD devices of different kinds, they are being used for multiple purposes. They are used for B2B cases, B2C cases. So many aspects over here where a lot of engaging and interactive experience to be built around the human and the systems. Then of course training and education where realistic simulations are required, and 3D visualization. So given these four domains, I think we have a lot in terms of how we can actually develop these interactive technologies, and for that, how do we lay the basis for having the infra? So quality infra, and therefore ground truth generation of data for these things to train such systems becomes very important. So my colleague Dr. Pawan will actually take you through the next few slides. Oh, sorry, I know why. Yeah. Huh? I don't know where.
Yeah.
Why did it?
It's fine. I'll take it.
Yeah, no, it's going back to the. Yeah. I think it's going back to the previous slide. Okay. Yeah, over to Pawan. Yep.
Thank you, Dr. Lokesh. So good morning, everyone. I hope it's audible. Yeah. Hi. Let me introduce myself. My name is Pawan Prasad. I work at Samsung R&D. So thank you, Dr. Lokesh, for a great background on human-computer interaction. So I think yesterday, Dr. Balwinder set the stage for building some of the infrastructure for the next generation experience technologies. So we're going to talk more on that today, right? Try to figure out. Yes. Yeah. No. Wait now. Yeah. So let's start with a simple question. It's not working. Let's remove the. Okay, let's start here. So let's start with a simple question. So I want to know if anybody is aware of what drives innovation at Samsung R&D. So who is responsible for like driving innovation at a company like Samsung R&D? So any thoughts or any answers? So what really drives at a company like a product company like Samsung? So any guesses? Right. So user feedback, daily changing customer needs. What else? Staying ahead of the curve, definitely. Yeah, but one of the most important things that drives innovation, right, is you. So what's you here, right? So you is the user. So the whole product development at Samsung or any other product company is around the user. So the user is very, very important when it comes to understanding. For a company like Samsung, right? So we want to understand what are the real life problems that a user goes through, and how we basically attack each of these user level problems. It basically helps drive innovation and building innovative products and to solve real world challenging problems. So, sorry, this is not working. Yeah, next. Yeah, so go to the next one. Yeah. So this motivates my talk on how we want to build human-centric data. So yesterday I had an opportunity to visit Dr. Surabji's lab yesterday. So I think they have basically building significant amount of, they're basically working on lot of human-centric data. So if I stand today, maybe I stand like this and ask Dr. Subhojit to collect my data, possibly he's going to collect 5 terabytes of data in 5 minutes. Because that is the kind of sensors that he has. Where he can basically scan you from top till the bottom and try to get as many signals as possible. So one of the most important source of data is the human, right? So now today we are going to look at why human centric data acquisition is very, very important, and how we're going to build an infrastructure which will collect human centric data, and how we're going to build products that are going to solve problems for the user itself. So that is the main key takeaway from my talk, which you can expect. So some of the important data that you could collect from humans, of course, I think many of you are already aware. Starting from the top, you can basically collect your brain signals. You can collect data from your eyes. You can collect how your body, data about your body language, body gestures. You can collect your health data as well. You can collect your heart rate. You can collect your sugar levels. You can do a lot of things like this. Oxygen levels. I think a lot of these kind of data became very, very popular during the COVID time. And very important aspect to this is how we're going to collect all of this data together to solve certain problems is what we're going to see. So next slide, next one. Yeah. So how each of these data is going to impact different domains, such as automotive. I think Dr. Loki talked about how each of these domains is very critical for engaging with humans and having a computer interaction. So when you look at automotive, for example, right? In order to interact with your machine, or your car, for example, or your truck, we need to understand the user intentions. Tracking your eyes, tracking your face is very important. Why face tracking is important? Because we want to understand whether you're really drowsy and so on. So automotive safety comes into picture. Gesture recognition without any distraction. So distraction is one of the biggest challenges. While you're driving, you don't want to have an interaction where there is a significant amount of distraction, right? So that's one of the challenge. So of course, robotics and assistive technologies, speech recognition, haptics, and so on. Like Dr. Loki started with on agentic AI. So this is the new, I think you're already aware of DeepSeek and so on. So the agentic AI is taking the world by storm, and we have natural language processing, reinforcement learning, and how we going to, agentic AI is something that the computer can take actions automatically without significant amount of user intervention. But we also need to understand how we're going to interact with such systems to make it even more immersive experiences, interacting with robots, and a robot interaction, human-robot interaction, and so on. And finally, immersive XR is where what I'm working on, where we basically build typically computer vision based solutions for having a totally immersive experience. So we basically build products to make your experiences very immersive. So I think we are all using mobile phones these days. I think the future looking very, very bright with more immersive products coming in. And I think the next 5 years is going to be really, really exciting in terms of how we're going to interact with computers. So the key takeaway is that the human-centric data acquisition is very critical to solve some of the problems in each of these domains. So next slide. Yeah. So let's look at some of the sample considerations, like how we're going to build infrastructure to generate or acquire human-centric data. So I'm just giving an example of a sample lab setup. So this, even though it looks like some science fiction picture, it's actually a real picture. So this is basically a fantastic collaboration between Meta and CMU, right? So they basically together have built something called the Muxi, which has about 240 cameras. It has several sensors attached. All of them are collecting data related to the human. So the human is sitting at the center, and he's performing actions. He's performing some predetermined set of actions, and that's collected, and that data is collected. And what are they collect? They collect eye gaze, they collect hand gestures, physiological signals, and haptics, all of them together, right? So some of the key considerations are listed here. So you need to have a large array of sensors, be it cameras, be it for vision, be it for non-vision, and whatever it is. And you need to have a capability to capture for a significant amount of duration, because the human needs time to perform certain actions. And it needs to be captured at a very high sampling rate, right? And most importantly, right, most of these sensors, the array of sensors, be it vision, non-vision, these physiological sensors, need to be perfectly synchronized. So the data that comes into the database, right, needs to have a perfect synchronization in terms of a microsecond accuracy. And a lot of research goes at exactly the same instant of time. It can be used to infer many, many things in the future. And most importantly, each of these array of sensors needs to be really, really well calibrated, right? So that they can work together. And another set of consideration is, of course, the environment considerations, because the data that we collect needs to be realistic in terms of lighting conditions, in terms of user interaction scenarios. They need to have enough space so that the user can move around, walk around, some data, and so on. And the communication systems also needs to have significant amount of bandwidth available. And lastly, the data consideration, you need to have storage capabilities, you need to have real-time data transfer capabilities, and so on. So let's look at some of the sensors for multimodal data captures. I think many of them, I think, are already there. I think Dr. Subhajit showed us a lot of these kind of sensors yesterday. It was really heartening to see some of these problems being at IIT Mandi. So we do have most of these sensors working in isolation. So now we are looking at how all of them is going to come together and give you truly multimodal data. So the key takeaway is that the data acquisition with high quality sensors that are perfectly synchronized is a very, very important requirement for the research in fully immersive human-computer interaction to move forward. So let's look at some of the existing capture setups worldwide. So these are some of the capture setups. Looks pretty cool, right? So let's look at the first one, the assembly hands on the top left. So it's a very, very primitive setup from Meta. It's called as assembly 101 hands. So it's mostly for hand gestures. So in order to understand how a human uses his hand to interact with, let's say, objects, with phones, for example, it can interact with computers and so on. All this data is collected, and this is annotated at very, very high precision. So this data is, of course, available publicly as well. Most of these are available. The second one, what we saw, is a fantastic collaboration with CMU and Meta. I think this is something that we want to build. I think the next time we come here, we want to show this. We want to have something similar or something better, showing IIT Mandi and Samsung in the future. So that's something that I think really, really interesting to build. And the next one is the CMU Panoptic Studio. So this is basically to do 3D reconstruction of any object, or maybe from of a human to create digital avatars and so on. The Max Planck Institute is also very interesting, extension where they basically had the capability of generating raw data for many, many sensors, and so on. So the 10-4 Studio, for example, they basically use this to generate, to create a lot of animation movies and digital avatars and so on. So the mixed reality labs and so on. So what do we have, right? So this is what we have currently worldwide. So now how do we build the next generation data capture setups, or the multimodal super setup is what we call it. So the next generation multimodal super setup, of course, this is AI generated, so we want to build something even better than this. So when I gave DALI to generate a multimodal super setup, this is what it gave me. So what it tells me is that it doesn't exist. So this is something that we want to build, right? So what we want to do in this setup is we want to have a wide array of sensors, which is human-centric, which can collect data from multiple parts of the human body, and of course humans interacting with the world. And it should have a list of sensors, and it can capture all of this at really high sampling rate, and at real time should be able to have this kind of a setup to be generating data and so on. So we looked at all of these sensors. So how are we going to build such a setup is something that we want to research. So this is a significant amount of research as well. To build these kind of setup also is a significant amount of research. And you can imagine the amount of outcome that you can generate with having such a super setup, right? So we build these kind of very primitive setups, and I think possibly with a simple primitive setup like this, Meta has about 200 papers. Now just imagine building setups like this. I mean, the outcomes, it's unimaginably enormous. So next slide. Yeah. So I think we talked about data acquisition so far, and I think I want to also highlight on generating accurate ground truth, right? So now it's also very important that how we're going to collect this data and we annotate, right? We need to have sophisticated systems in place where we have to have sophisticated algorithms so we can do automatic annotation. This is humongous amount of data, right? So we need to understand how we're going to scale in terms of how the annotation happens automatically. We need to talk about automatic annotation of data. So that is where the new generative AI can help in to kind of create a very accurate ground truth for building the future AI systems. So of course, all of these will not work in isolation. All of them need to come together to basically build the best infrastructure, not just in acquisition, but also in terms of generating data and also future post-processing. So we are looking at typically look at human-centric, like hand tracking, eye tracking, body tracking, face tracking, and so on. So some of the research challenges, right, some of the challenges in multimodal data generation and interaction is analysis of correlation. Because most of this data are, is totally different. They are captured at different sampling rates. They basically, they all work in isolation. They have different expertise and so on. So this is truly a multimodal way. And then analysis of correlation between the different modalities is one of the important research challenges that we need to address, given that we have a data set that is coming in the future. And assessing immersive experiences of the user by combining different signals, for example, the EEG and brain signals, how we can basically engage the user in a totally immersive experience. So that's also another area of research. And generating 3D avatar is, of course, it's there. But yeah, we want to take it one step forward and build great immersive experiences. So some of the multimodal applications in HCI is listed here. So starting from entertainment, which is one of the most popular, of course, gaming, movies, I think it's the most interesting. We need to have a very immersive human-computer interaction. So education and training, right? So immersive learning environments, so corporate training programs. So these are pretty popular. So some of the examples. So healthcare and rehabilitation, right? Demonstrate therapeutic exercises, demonstrate complex surgeries and so on. As we know, I think the healthcare and rehabilitation also became very important post-COVID. So the world is kind of evolving as well. And I know also in terms of automotive, so we talked about distraction-free automotive user experience, right? And of course, we cannot leave out e-commerce and retail because it's also a very fantastic business models as well, and so on. So next one. Yeah. So this is the conclusion. So what are the advantages of having such a multimodal data infrastructure? So we can basically advance in terms of research, in terms of building ecosystem, as well as in terms of product development. How are we going to transform our existing research into translational research, where we can basically create products that really solve challenging problems that the user faces every day. So having the right infrastructure enables research, design and ecosystem. And yeah, that's the end of my talk. Thank you. So Mike.
One last line to add to what Pawan said. So we have started attempt at our office already to build this kind of advanced infra. So we have started with SLAM technologies and some of those things with advanced OptiTrack cameras, around 24 of them perfectly synchronized. Along with that, we are trying to sync the other data as well and some advanced stuff. So we are in this path. So, so one of the suggestions we had for this consortium, HA consortium that's there here at IIT Mandi is, let's go in this path together. Okay, so we work towards our journey and you can also tag the journey so that the ecosystem is built and we can collaborate effectively. So that's the idea. Questions?
Yes.
I thought Arno, we can prevent him from asking questions. Okay, yeah, go ahead. Bad habit. Okay.
Yeah, so I think this is fantastic, and we look forward to work with you definitely, right? One question I had was a gap between, the data that is collected in this amazing lab, right? Which as Pawan, rightly put, requires a lot of synchronization. And I'm assuming that is all for training your models and so on, right? Now, when we sort of transfer that to, users in the real world, right? Their synchronization probably goes for a toss, right? So the question is that, should we also build or work on models which work on data which is not very well synchronized? I mean, we do expect some kind of synchronization, but see, there is a lot of context already that when a user makes a decision, he would be making a decision with data or with, with sort of the signals and so on collected in a small vicinity, even if they're not exactly synchronized.
Yeah.
So
there are two phases to this,
right.
Arnav.
Yeah, so that's my question.
Yeah. So what we are trying to emphasize today in this particular discussion is the high quality standard infra that has to be there here is for the sake of ground truth data generation.
Right. Yes.
So the establishing the ground truth in most of these cases will help us calibrate the rest of the things. So which is where the second phase comes, what you mentioned.
Okay.
So where the actual real user will come into picture.
Right.
Okay. See, if you bring the real user into this lab, he also will be little constrained and contained. So when we collect data outside, that is a reference. But we need to have a ground truth versus with measure all these things.
Yeah.
So when we try to do, see, if you look at, I am talking to you, invariably my hands are moving.
Exactly.
I have not programmed these things. Right. And whatever I am talking also. So I can't say that, everything is of course coming out of the same system, therefore it's auto-synchronized. Yeah. But whereas in real life, typically what happens is the reactions change depending on the environment, right? So reference has to be perfect, which is what we are trying to insist. So we need to have perfectly synchronized data available for the sake of referencing and trying to say how accurate we can be near to the human.
Yeah,
that's the point.
So that becomes a ground truth, and then, but then we do need to.
We also need to have that setup. So, in fact, we did discuss this back home at our office. There has to be kind of a semi-mobile setup as well, which can collect data from user.
Exactly. So that's what I was talking.
So this is a fixed setup.
Yes.
Yeah. So I thought you were also banned from asking questions. Okay, Somjit.
So I was just wondering that you work on smart implants, right? Do you closely work in a hospital setting with respect to testing on human subjects when it comes to smart implants?
Yeah, unfortunately, I will not be able to discuss that. It's work happening elsewhere in Korea, in our headquarters, so not in Bangalore.
In India, working with bio implants is almost like next to impossible. Yeah. And that's why I was wondering, how is it?
Yeah, so if you look at this deck, none of these things are directly from our work that's going on in our office, except for the basic infra part. Because the research that happens is different. So here we wanted to bring that awareness with what all kind of things that we need to sit and work together for the future HCI. That's the idea. So don't relate this directly to Samsung anywhere. Okay.
No, implants is invasive. Implant has to be invasive.
Yeah.
Hello, good morning, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, you are testing humans in your setup, lab setup party there. So every humans are having a different activity in the same environment. So how you can do the segregation and generalization of your data in that case?
You want to take that question?
So how do you generalize?
Yeah.
Like two different users.
You want to take the question?
Yeah. So I think slowly we are moving towards agentic AI, where you need to collect not every form of data, but you can infer certain things that So the training algorithms, the algorithms that we build, right, automatically understands like how do you basically react to certain newer environments if it is not really trained. So those are something that are slowly evolving. So that's how the generative AI is also evolving, right? But we still need some initial primitive data so that we can start our training our models. And then once we have certain limited amount of data, and then we can keep on adding new and newer data and so in the future. So of course there will be certain scenarios which are definitely not captured always, but of course the agentic AI systems these days then they basically can automatically kind of synthetically generate. So one of the important things we also do is both synthetic and real data generation. So the synthetic and real, so if we cannot really kind of mimic certain scenarios, we try to create certain synthetic data generation from that as well. So of course the real data is very, very important. So that is where these systems will basically build real data generation for you. But if there is a gap, synthetic data will help.
So we do have a mechanism for that. So yesterday I mentioned about this AI data labs we established at around 4 universities. So they actually reach out to NGOs, and the NGOs actually help us gather data. So we have some mechanism there as well.
Okay. So sir, you are getting a lot of data. Then you just now told that you are having some reference frame you are comparing with. Then how you are deciding that reference frame? Because persons are different, their behaviors are different. You are collecting data from NGOs and all. Then automatically you will get n number of data. And then deciding a reference frame, how it will be possible?
No, the data that's generated as ground truth is the reference.
Okay.
See, always the ground truth reference has to be, for example, suppose you want to say something is 2 feet, then I need to know what is 1 feet.
Yeah.
Right? So that is this.
Okay.
It's the metric, and on top of that we compare.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, how much data set you are including in your studies before calibration? Like how many subjects or how much data set?
Usually it's in hundreds.
100 subjects?
Yeah, hundreds. Minimum starts with around 50 subjects.
Sir, is
In
there
fact, in
any
our
standards
for
it?
one of the experiments that Pawan recently did, I think we had around 300 subjects, right?
Yeah, the number of subjects. So I mean, just to give you an example, right? So when we do one scan of the human, it generates about 300 GB of data. So
100 GB?
300 GB of data.
Yeah, different kinds of data. So what we do is we tie up with universities, in fact. So there is a institute near to our office. Then we invited around 300 students of different seniority classes and all that, and they came and gave data for us.
Sir, in your company, have you any standard for this type of data set, or you are just taking randomly 100 subjects or 200 in a range? Is there any standard for it?
So it depends on the scenarios that we want to address at that point of time, right? So we basically, it does not solve the world problems one shot, right? So we basically evolve. So we start with certain, we take some baby steps. We start with small data and slowly expand to larger and larger data sets. So we definitely have diversity. So diversity is very important in terms of what we collect. So diversity is not something that we will solve overnight, but it will happen over a period of time. So data generation or data acquisition is not a one-time process. It happens throughout. Process. It's always it's like this is a system which is always on.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, one last question. He is raising hand from a long time. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sir has the last question.
There.
No, there.
Naveen,
that gentleman.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
I'm Shravan from Integrated MBA. So first of all, thank you, Dr. Lokesh and Dr. Pawan, for delivering the talk. And my question is regarding agentic AI. So as you mentioned that it's almost an autonomous form of AI, so it can take much decisions without much human intervention. So sir, what can we do to guide rail that model? Like, can we use some sort of multimodal and similar model to guide rail it? because it can make mistakes and it's a fairly nascent piece of technology. So what can we do? My question is open for both of you, sir.
Yeah, I think Pawan will
Yeah,
take
so I think this is a very very interesting question. So basically, it's again got to do with data, right? So now how we basically evaluate what the decision that has been taken by the agentic AI system. How do we evaluate such systems? So we need to have infrastructure in place, like how we can quickly evaluate and quickly give feedback back into the system, so that it can basically so definitely agentic AI, whatever it does is definitely not correct, right? It will definitely go wrong in some places. So it's all about how we build infrastructure in terms of how well we can evaluate the responses from the agentic AI and how well we can feed the information back into the agentic AI system so that you can make it even better and better. Because it's also continuously learning. It's not like a one-time learned system, so it keeps learning, right? So it's all about building this kind of infrastructure in terms of evaluating these systems and giving back the feedback, giving the feedback. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, my question is, you are building a huge infrastructure, data acquisition infrastructure. I hope you are also taking care of its cyber security, because this huge data is gold mine for somebody and many. So you can understand how you are going to protect that. And of course, IIT Mandi also has to think from that perspective, because this is a huge gold mine going to be.
So in all the laboratories that we have established, AI data labs we have established at multiple universities like VIT, Vellore, Chennai, then KLE labs and all that. It's highly secure place. The security which is used in our office, Samsung office, same thing has been replicated over there. And our security personnel, they oversee that remotely. So nothing can actually go out. And even the people who are working inside are validated by us, so that nothing is taken out. And no USB allowed, nothing. And even no connection outside. It's a completely bound place, just like us.
Air gap you are maintaining, but still there are many methods,
No, no method.
No method?
In Samsung, an elephant can come inside, not even an ant can go out.
Elad from
You can
Israel.
try
Can you come?
No, here it's extremely strict.
It's like going through airport security.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
gentlemen. May I please request Professor Syed Abbas to please come on stage and felicitate Dr. Pavan Prasad. Moving on, time for our next talk. May I please invite Dr. Swapnjit Sahu, Associate Professor of Psychiatry, PGI MER Chandigarh. His topic is social robots and their applicability in India for managing depression and anxiety. Dr. Sahu.
Okay. So at the outset, I would like to thank the organizers for allowing me to present this topic. And my topic is totally different from the industry. I will be more focusing on academia, that is what is the utility of social robots and whether they can be applicable in India in managing depression and anxiety. So I will be discussing on the broad headings on these topics one by one. So let's first understand the problem statement of the prevalence of depression and anxiety in India. So there are different types of mental disorders. So depression and anxiety are considered to be the common mental disorders, and other disorders like schizophrenia, psychosis, OCD, they are considered to be severe mental disorder based on the prevalence, because depression and anxiety is the common illness, and as we can see that more than 300 million people are affected as per the WHO latest report, and India is known to be the home for around 18% of this global estimate who are affected by depression. And mind it that all patients who have depression, they have comorbid anxiety, may not be anxiety disorders, but the vice versa is not the true. And as per the latest mental health survey, which was conducted all over India, it was found that 1 in every 20 individuals, or that is 5%, they suffer from depression at any point of their life. And 15% of the adults, they require active intervention from a mental health professional. And the prevalence varies from male to female, higher being in the females. So these are some of the figures from this survey, that as you can see, 10% is the prevalence all over India over the common mental disorder, which accounts for the depression and anxiety, and severe mental disorder are only around 1%. And this is the age-wise prevalence, as you can see, the highest being in the 40 to 50 years of age, or from 30 to 50 years onwards. So we see there is a greater prevalence of this depression and anxiety in our country, which is likely to hit by 2030. But what are the limitations of providing mental health care in India? The first is that there is a huge burden of the mental health care needs, and there is mismatch between the demands and the supply. With regard to the Indian context, that there is dearth of the mental health professional or the manpower, and then there is issues in training the grassroots level, that we can train the grassroots level for identifying the tuberculosis or any other thing, or mainly for the infectious diseases. But when it comes to train the lay healthcare workers at the grassroots level how to identify mental health issues, it's a very tough task. Then again, there is efficacy issues of the existing medication. It has been found that 1/3 of the patient, even if whatever you treat with the existing medication, antidepressants, or antipsychotics, or any benzodiazepines for the ongoing mental health issues, when they come to the doctors or come to a psychiatrist, only 1/3 or 2/3 respond, and 1/3 they don't respond. So on this category of people, we usually focus on the non-pharmacological principles with regard to the CBT, that is cognitive behavior therapy or counseling, along with yoga. But again, the issue is there is lack of training and lack of acceptability in our Indian population. They don't follow it as we advise them. Again, other issues that there is fear of stigmatization. Many people will be having mental health disorders, but they don't visit to the mental health professional because of lack of awareness, and other issue because of the stigma. Then again is the social cultural barriers, that most of the Indian people, they follow the traditional healing practice and the prayers, and after the illness becomes severe, they go to the doctors. And again, there is mismatch between the geographical accessibility to the mental health care, because the scenario is very different in our country. Now this is the treatment gap from that survey, that what is the gap, how many people are having and how many people are going to the hospitals for getting treatment. So as you can see, the depression and anxiety, which I have highlighted, the mental health gap is around 85%. That is 85% they suffer, they don't get treatment. That is huge. Now coming to what is the utility of social robots in healthcare, and what is its importance in the mental health care. As it has been discussed in the previous topic, that these are social robots, are cyber physical systems which are designed to autonomously or semi-autonomously assist the patient in healthcare environment. The capability typically is that the emotional component, they have an emotional support, They also can help in medical task automation and aiding rehabilitation efforts. The key goals are to enhance the human-robot interaction, reduce the caregiver burden because there is a huge amount of caregiver stress to the caregivers when they're handling the patients with mental health issues, and it can improve the patient outcome in terms of providing emotional support. Now, mostly in mental health care, where these social robots have been utilized in taking care of the elderly to promote the independence, to provide emotional companionship, help in daily activity support and improve communication with their caregivers and family, and also in the child when they alleviate anxiety while they are visiting in the medical setting in case of chronic physical illness. Many children, they face anxiety while coming to the hospital, so these social robots can be helpful in relieving the anxiety. Also in autism, they help in delivering some sort of therapy in sort of improving the emotional component. And also in rehabilitation, in helping in emotional recovery by providing personalized exercises. So these are some of the ways the social robot can be implemented while delivering in mental health care. Now, types of robot which have been developed which in healthcare are the humanoid, as you know, which looks like human with emotional interaction, and companion like pet-like robots which have an comfort and therapy, and telepresence. And technological components that it was discussed that they need to have an advanced sensors, AI-driven capabilities, and customizable designs. Now, coming to what is the international data about its uses all over the world, then only we can come to whether it is applicable in our setup and what are the various limitations. So the worldwide data suggests there are various robots, social robots which have been developed by the name of now Paper, Pearl, and also this figure which we can see is the Paro, famous Paro robot, which looks like a pet, which has been widely used in Western countries and also in Japanese and Korean context to provide mental health care and helpful in assisting mostly in the dementia patient. Now, technological features, what should be the technological features when we use particularly in patients with depression? Like it should be, the robot should be having an ability for emotion recognition, that is they should be equipped with sensor and AI algorithm to detect the facial expression, whether the patient is sad, how to cheer him up, and whether to detect the body language and also the vocal tone, so that it can enable the adaptive responses that mimic the human empathy. So it should be just like a typical caregiver. We should need to frame a robot, we need to design in such a way. Next is that it should have multimodal interaction, otherwise it will just look like a, we need to have a humanistic approach to that, so that with multiple sensory channels, so that it looks like a human. And it should be having customization, that it should be customized as per the age of the patient, as per the cultural context, with regard to the language, and also with regard to the severity. If it is mild depression, it can help in assisting to go over. If it is severe depression, it can help in doing helping or boosting the mood to do minimum efforts to do the work. So we need to focus on these three aspects when we are planning to develop a social robot, particularly for depression, which is totally different as compared to dementia. Now, the studies which have been found that all over the world, there are various studies, and they have particularly, and now there is a systemic review to suggest that what is the utility of social robots in older adults. So best way is to do a systemic review and meta-analysis. So these are the various studies which I have gone through, and mostly these studies have been done in New Zealand, Norway, Australia, and USA. Mostly the sample size ranges from 52 to 60, around less than 100. So what the summary suggests, this study has been published in 2017, that the social robot intervention consisted of companion, communication, and health monitoring robots, while 3 studies have proved quite efficacious in reducing the depressive symptoms in elderly, but 3 studies have found there is a decrease but non-significant trends in depression scores, and there is quite a good potential for social robot intervention for reducing depression in elderly. Most of the studies are done in elderly because in this country the elderly usually live separate, and they don't have any family members to take care of them. So they suffer from loneliness, they suffer from depression. So and there is a huge cost involved in taking care of the elderly patient because of the high degree of the finances involved. So now they are trying to develop social robots which can minimize the cost of taking care and as well as provide good support. But currently the evidence is not strong enough to recommend for in the clinical practice. Now this is another study which is the latest, which has again, it is a meta-analysis. It has been found that whether it is efficacious in those with old age home, because in most of the countries now the elderly patients are living in old age home, and the same scenario is going to happen in India in the near future, because the family are getting more and more fragmented and all the people are living separate. So there is a high incidence of loneliness in our country also. So this study particularly has found that the studies which have used social robot intervention, they have found when used social robots, there is a high efficacy in reduction of the depression score as well as in the loneliness score. And what is the, again, when you did this subgroup analysis, whether human robot will be more beneficial as compared to pet robot, whether it will be a group-based activity or individual robot, and what should be the minimum duration of the session where social robot should be utilized. The studies have found that animal safe robots are found to be more beneficial like human robots. Group-based activity are more efficacious. Minimum of 30 minutes per session and more than 3 times per week have been found to improve the depression and loneliness. And total therapy duration should be more than 12 weeks to suggest that this intervention should be most effective. So these are mostly from the clinical point of view, not that we just build a social robot and give it to the patient, but we need to know that how much time we need to engage and for how much duration we need to engage, so that the intervention should be effective. Now in children, these robots like now and huggable robot, now children have different types of needs. So the robots need to be designed in a different way. So they have designed these huggable robots which engage the children in play, conversation and interactive activities. Now studies have found that they reduce the emotional distress and anxiety during the hospital visit. Mainly this can be used in the vaccine center where the children become more anxious while visiting the doctors to get vaccinated. Then huggable robots, they have been found improve the autism. So there is a wide scope where we can use these human robots in mental health in the children. And also they have been utilized as the coaches, as coaches for the adolescent to improve their social and emotional skills, as well as to reinforce positive thoughts by knowing what the adolescent is going through, and it can boost by giving positive thoughts to work on it, to improve the physical activity, or to improve to challenge their negative thoughts, or by reducing the examination stress. So many times they can be utilized as a coach by integrating AI into the robot. So the studies which have been found what type of robot the children usually prefer, they have found that the robot should be a pet-like with a soft texture, expressive eyes and emotion detection to support the activities of daily living. So this is completely different as compared to the older adults. Now group therapy intervention by utilizing only a single social robot has also been effectively utilized in some of the settings to foster interaction and collaboration between the participants. Mostly the Betty and the Pepper robots have been utilized to facilitate relaxation exercises, storytelling and mood lifting games, and this again has been found to improve the emotional and psychological support. But what are the issues faced? Because developing the social robot is not, we need to know what are the issues usually has been reported by the participants who are engaged and by the caregiver. So these are mostly the organizational barriers, like usually when they are using the social robot, the patient or the caregiver, they found it to be a noisy environment, it requires a storage area, it requires a charging facility, the staff, because of which many times the staffs are caregiver resistant to implement, and it can increase the workload of the caregiver. They have to take care of the patient, again they have to take care of the social robot. Then the frequency of sessions is not adapted. Clinical barriers mean, the participant usually have a sensory deprivation. They may be having visual impairment, or they may be having language issues, they may be having hearing impairment. So how to integrate the robot so that to pick up those, and they may be having, so that they can have a meaningful communication. So these are some of the clinical barriers, and the participant may also fear the robot. So the texture of the robot should be made in a comfortable way. Now technical barriers, the technology aspect, they have been discussed, is that the robot was difficult to understand, the touch screen was difficult to use, the voice recognition system was not deficient, the speech rhythm deficits have been found, that robot took too long to respond, and otherwise either it can be very fragile, that it can break, or it can be too heavy to move about. So these are some of the issues we need to tackle when we are designing a social robot, when it has to be used in a healthcare, because the patients are always already they have been traumatized with their problem. So the social robot intervention which we are planning, it should be user friendly so that it can be used easily used. Now, with regard to the mental, whether there is a role of social robots in India, which has a very huge prevalence of depression, anxiety with different other issues. So now there is very limited data on it. I thought that there is no data on it, but there is very limited data, and it's an emerging area. One of the institute, which is very famous institute, that is the SCAR for the schizophrenia research in the Chennai, which works with the patients with schizophrenia and also on dementia. And they have done this study with whether the social robot, they have designed this setup of social robot, and they have found that this robot, when used in dementia care, they have found this robot triggers various emotions, like when if you can go through what the instruction you give and what the human says. The robot will just initiate a conversation by asking, good morning, what can I call you, how is your mood today, are you feeling tired, let me tell you a joke, or give you some scenario. So it can trigger happiness, surprise, and different emotions, or neutral, so that it can give a meaningful information to the patient, and it can just engage in some activity. So usually the patients with dementia, they are very difficult to engage in activity, and the caregivers feel burnt out because they have to work on different issues, and also they have to take care of the patient. So utilizing such a social robot which can engage the patient at least for few hours will be quite beneficial, and it was found to be quite effective, and it was quite feasible as reported by the caregivers. Now, another study which I was very thankful that it has been done from this institute itself, that IIT Mandi and Hive. So it was done by Mr. Anuj and Varun Dutt, and I found that they have developed this Furhat robot, which has animated features and with conversational AI, with camera, with tracking features. What they did is that to see whether how a person doing a pen and pencil evaluation of depression and anxiety compared to a robot. So this is the very first step, whether we can utilize this robot in identifying depression and anxiety. So it's quite a good study, and they have found that they have comparable efficacy in detecting. Also the participants, which are mostly the students, they found this to be good comfort and satisfaction. Many a time the students they find very difficult while answering the questions when engaging in depression and anxiety, maybe because of the stigma attached with the questions, whether I should reveal or not, what would the person will think when I'm telling these issues. And many a times we can because this question also asks about suicide and self-harm. So many a times they are not, they don't feel comfortable in answering. So using such a social robot which can, who don't have any, without having any judgment, they can easily answer. So with a great degree of comfort. So in fact, this is a way ahead we can think about in identifying mental health issues to screen. Now, what are the challenges and limitations? As you know that there is issues regarding the privacy, dependency, and emotional attachment, because some studies in the Western countries, they have found that when we are using a social robot, many patients or in depression and anxiety, they get emotionally attached to the robot, and then they neglect the human or the normal caregiver. So that is also an issue. So we need to focus on that with regard to duration of the sessions and all, and we'll need to use it ethically. Technological limitation, that the current robots struggle with understanding complex emotional nuances and maintain a long-term engagement, and also because of the cost issues and accessibility issues for wider adoption in low resource settings. So we need to develop a social robot which can be easily affordable in our settings. So another is that not just affordability, people have also complained that with the fear that whether by using social robot they will replace the common caretakers or the other helpers or the NGOs who are providing care to that. So whether when we use social robots in our country, whether it will replace the other use. So there is another fear. while analyzing the responses from the caretaker, this study they found that, it is also Indian study, that whether we will be happy if we replace your role by a robot role, then most of the participants, they said that it will reduce the workload, it will alleviate our fatigue and psychological drained out, because after long-term care, usually the caregiver, they suffer a huge drain out, and also they can be helpful as a non-judgmental helping aids. But again, there is a fear of being replaced, amplify the inequality in job, fear of job loss, and anticipated issues of trust in robots. And also, there is also common belief in our society that technology can be harmful to the society. Everybody is watching us and all that. So no doubt there is fear as well as the benefits, but the time will say in which way we should go ahead. So we need to address the ethical concerns. If we need to integrate this in our mental health practice, we need to reduce the cost for wider adoption, like low cost and durable social robot. And we need to involve the mental health professional while designing such a robot, so that what component to add so that it will be helpful in providing appropriate therapy, promoting confidence, and potential complications in the event of technical failure. So the professionals need to know what to do. And also we need to future perspective that the emotional intelligence component which we have, which the humans have, that need to be integrated in the robot, so that it could be proved to be more beneficial, more adaptable to the diverse healthcare needs. And we need to apply for grants for this intervention from the Make in India and the Digital India schemes. And also we need to collaborate with the health industry for implementation, so that it can be aptly used in the actual patients who require it, so that they will be the decision maker whether it could be actually useful in our scenario or not. Thank you. Yes, sir.
So I have two questions.
Yes, sir.
The first question is, so in this interaction between the robot and the human being, I saw the robot starting the interaction. So is it possible that the human being starts the interaction, robot carries on?
Yes, sir. It is possible that the humans can start the interaction. But what we see in our category of patient, they suffer from the anhedonia component. Anhedonia means that they lack that effort to start any conversation or start any meaningful activity. So usually the patient who suffer from depression and anxiety, they need to be stimulated to go into an interaction. So if at later phase they can also start, but usually when we're starting a therapy with intervention, usually the robot needs to start a communication. So that's a plus point. And again, when the patients improve, I think patients also get attached and can start a conversation.
My second question is that I was a bit surprised to see that robot in the shape of pets are more popular than the humanoid robots. Is there any specific reason?
Pets are more popular. Pets are more popular than.
But why?
There is no such reason, but when compared with the humanoid robots, pets are found to be, because I think that look like a pet, but the humanoid robots, they don't have that facial feature which resemble the human. So that can be, yes. Yes, sir.
See, pets do not have any expectations from humans. They are always lovable to you without any, they don't want anything in return actually. In human interaction, it is basically you want something from other person and same other person is also wanting something from you. I think that is the answer only. No, this is the one answer actually. There can be multiple answers to it. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So very interesting, and I am very happy to see this type of initiative here. because the robot you mentioned now and paper, I was serving as the chief scientist of SoftBank Robotics Europe, and we have designed and developed behavior because we built that in Europe, and we have put this kind of robots in many setups, and some of the studies which you mentioned, we have been doing it for healthcare, elderly care, autism therapy, mental well-being. And my understanding is that the findings of these studies from Europe or other parts of the world, we might not be able to generalize it or might not be able to directly adopt it in Indian context. And we have to understand that if there is a cultural or social bias or requirement for this kind of adaptation, and also is there a long-term study which we have to do before we conclude the effectiveness or the non-effectiveness or a humanoid robot or non-humanoid robot? I think we have to put that effort in Indian context. So do you have some plans or some ideas that how we can implement these things in context and then try to get the findings to design the right kind of behavior as well as the right kind of robot?
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for the question as well as from the comments that you are involved in this social robot intervention. I would suggest that whatever I have done the study and I have on this research background, but I find that most of the Indian population, first we need to do an acceptability study. Then we can do a short-term study. Then we can look about the long-term studies. Whatever studies which have been done in Europe, they are also done mostly for 12 weeks to 15 weeks or mostly for the 20 weeks studies. So there is not much data to suggest what would be the long-term efficacy of this intervention. But some studies have also found it to be a companion-like robot which are used in the old age homes. So or those who are living or in the destitutes or homeless people, they have been used. But in Indian context, as you know, there is the percentage of person who are staying in these communities are very less. Most of the person, they live with the family. So those, we need to do an acceptability study first, whether this concept of social robot would be feasible and acceptable to our population or not first, apart from all the technological barriers. So then we need to
that's
plan
the
ahead.
key thing. So I will be happy to collaborate and contribute and support whatever is needed. And obviously the cost is one of the factors which you
Yes, sir.
mentioned, which once we will start developing things in India, that will be reduced. But apart from that, we have to see these robots are designed to bridge the gap or it is to replace. Like in other places, it is a requirement that we need a robot to replace because there is a lack of human touch. But in India, it will be different. So we have to really design from that context. Yeah. Okay,
Agreed, sir.
thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I have a slightly, antagonistic question here. So I think, and you are the best person to answer. I mean, you as a clinical professional. So I believe there have been a lot of studies that human connection also can help these diseases. Like if you have, more connectivity, more social, touch, right? Now, while I agree that in these kind of scenarios, in these kind of clinical scenarios like depression, the patient does not want human connection possibly, and that's where social robots come in. But, can an overuse of social robo actually contribute towards more isolation and actually go against the, the need for human connectivity? Or can that be embedded in the social robo, that the social robo actually promotes more human connectivity, and then gradually the role of social robo phases out and the patient is kind of more comfortable with humans? So what is your
Very nice thought, sir. And I think because one of the issues what the papers have highlighted, that after a gradual period of time when the patient recovers from the acute depressive episode or anxiety episode, then they have an emotional attachment with the robot and they neglect the humanistic interaction. So that is also an issue. So ideally it should be designed that how many minutes per hour, how many minutes per day, and for how long it should be practiced, so that emotional dependency components should be reduced. And also it needs to integrate that the robots should be designed in such a way that it will promote human interaction, that you need to go out, meet your friends or something like that. So you need to give some prompt messages or talk in such a way, so that it all depends on how the algorithm is prepared to stimulate interaction.
Thank you. I think that helps a lot. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Sahu. May I please request Professor Arnab Bhavsar to come on stage and felicitate Dr. Sahu. Thank you, Dr. Sahu and Dr. Bhavsar. Time for the next talk. I would now invite Professor Aditya Murthy, Center for Neuroscience from IC Bangalore. He'll be talking about building bridges between basic and clinical neurosciences in industry. Professor Murthy.
Can you hear me? Okay. Okay, thanks a lot again for the invitation, particularly thanks to Shubho. I think a few days ago I had given a talk, a colloquium, which really sort of encompassed my core expertise, which is in cognitive neuroscience. But Shubho suggested that it might be good if I actually come here. So as a confession, this is the first time I'm actually doing a sort of a talk with, has a lot of applied characteristics, and so in some sense I'm a little bit of an oddball here. So I basically do basic neuroscience for a living, enjoy doing it, but as I'm sort of winding down over the years, I can see the need to actually translate some of that stuff into actually a sort of a real world use or product or application. So here I am, and but at the same time, what I'll do is I'll plug basic neuroscience, okay? And I want to tickle some of the young students here to actually also see the value in basic neuroscience that sort of sometimes predates, the technologies that we see today by sometimes decades, right? So I'll give you some concrete examples of how basic neuroscience in my field, in the area of cognitive neuroscience, has actually had impacts on healthcare and the development of entire ecosystems, actually companies dedicated to these kinds of issues. And then in the last part of the talk, what I'll do is I'll try to talk about some of our work, okay, which I think has some implications in the future, in the near future, hopefully. So here goes. So why study neuroscience? Well, brains, and deficient brains contribute 1/3 actually, 30% of the total disease burden. This is significant and not surprising actually, given how important brains are. The present treatments, modalities alleviate symptoms to some extent, but don't cure it. Better public health and primary health care cannot substantially lower incidences of most brain-related disorders, right? The cause of many brain disorders are unknown. Case in point is Alzheimer's disease, right, which is going to affect, coming generations, right, in a huge way. And it's therefore important to discover the pathogenic mechanisms underlying these disorders. Okay, you really do need to do basic neuroscience. And furthermore, unlike as in other organs, which get messed up, like the heart, and this is of no offense to the heart, it's a beautiful organ, it can be replaced with biological and other artificial organs. This is not possible and not feasible in the case of the brain. People have attempted brain transplants, for obvious reasons they don't work, and there are fundamentally ethical issues if I get my brain transplanted with another agent, right? And so basic research is important. Now I work, as I said, in the area of cognitive neuroscience, and I've been studying sort of using non-human primates, awake behaving primates, to actually study the computations that different areas of the brain perform, okay? And for those of you who weren't in the previous talk, this sort of work entails training monkeys, which have brains that are the closest, evolutionarily speaking, to the human brain, to perform cognitive tasks, okay? And while they perform these tasks, you can actually stick these microelectrodes, okay, and listen to the voltage changes, action potentials that are happening, okay, while the animal is behaving, right? And so what I'll do is I'll talk about two specific examples of how this research has had actually profound influence and continues to in the surface of applied neuroscience. So the first example is the treatment of Parkinson's disease with deep brain stimulation, okay, which was actually it's a novel way of actually treating diseases, particularly in Parkinson's disease. But the standard approach is, of course, replacement with dopamine, but often over time it doesn't work, okay? And this is where this treatment modality comes into play. Now this discovery actually originated in the work in the laboratory of Marlon DeLong at Emory and his colleagues while they were recording neural activity from monkeys performing motor tasks in an area of the brain called the subthalamic nucleus, as shown here. Okay, it's a small tiny area deep down below the thalamus. And this is sort of a typical recording, okay, in a monkey that's actually resting. Okay, so you see this activity that's very robust and continuous in nature, and that's actually shown here. Okay, so this is the spiking activity, and recorded from an SDN in a condition of a normal monkey. Okay, now they found, and they could do this in animal models, generate Parkinsonian monkeys, okay, by ablating this area of the brain called the substantia nigra pars compacta, which actually contains dopamine, okay, thereby generating Parkinsonism. And they found, actually interestingly, that they were able to, in the process, convert this sort of tonic activity in the subthalamic nucleus into this sort of burst-like activity. So in the process of removing dopamine, they kind of were able to see a faulty circuit, okay, that sort of arose. And it turns out, and this is decades of research, that this burstiness is what is highly correlated, is a biomarker of the tremor, rigidity, and bradykinesia that one sees. And so the idea conceptually was, in order to get back from this bursty to this tonic level, is there a way in which we can apply voltages and currents to sort of restore a faulty circuit, just as possibly an engineer would do by replacing a capacitor, a faulty capacitor or transistor, right? And this was the genesis, and this is again decades of work, and very critical to this was also the work of Ben Abid, a very famous neurosurgeon, who developed this thing called Ben's gun, which is essentially an electrode that's actually inserted into the subthalamic nucleus that can that can deliver high frequency voltages. Okay, and what that does is sort of depolarize. Still don't understand the mechanisms very well, but it essentially possibly depolarizes the subthalamic nucleus neurons, and in the process converts it from this bursty firing into a tonic firing. Okay, and this technology, and it works, right? And because it works, this technology has sort of led to the development of a huge number of companies. Okay, and these are not small companies, right? These are multinational, multi-billion startups, right? There's Medtronic, Boston Scientific, and so on and so forth. And now DBS it's been so successful in Parkinson's disease, it's being tried in other diseases, right? So in the case of epilepsy, there's ways in which you can use stimulation to quell in a closed loop the development of the epilepsy. It's being used and tested in OCD, in depression, so on and so forth, right? So there's this nice synergy between basic research here, clinical outcomes, and of course, generation of companies, which then further fuel basic research. Here's an example. As I said, I'm a basic neuroscientist, but I collaborate with clinicians, and this is sort of work done in collaboration with NIMHANS in Bangalore. And this was done to study the effect of DBS on motor learning, right? And so this is a guy, the DBS, the way you give this high frequency stimulation is through a device. It's basically like a pacemaker, effectively. And so you can turn it on and turn it off. So when it's off, you get the tremors, and when it's on, it improves. It's literally turning a switch on and off that causes these radical changes in motor behavior. Now, a second example that I'll talk about is from this field of brain-machine interface. It's a very, highly active area which involves a collaboration with basic neuroscientists and, clinicians. And again, the genesis of this technology started with basic research in monkey motor neurosciences. And so this is the work of Georgopoulos, and in the 80s, he trained a monkey to make reaching movements to various directions in 2 dimensions, okay? And as you can see, for this particular neuron, okay, these are action potentials, okay? And each row is one trial, okay? And you can see just by looking at this figure that this neuron fires, it responds in certain directions of motions, okay, of movement, but does not fire and gets actually inhibited in other directions of movement, okay? In other words, it's movement selective, right? Selective to the direction of movement, and that's illustrated here. So the number of action potentials produced is greater in only these directions of movement, okay? And Georgopoulos found that if he recorded, and this is interesting, right? If he recorded from just 100 cells, really 100, I mean there are millions and billions of cells, right, in this part of the cortex, but if he could record from 100 such cells, he could actually, with a very simple algorithm, which is basically vector summation, he could predict, okay, the ensuing direction of movement of the monkey even before the monkey moved, okay? In other words, he could predict the intentionality of the monkey. And this is the basis, the core, okay, the core engine, the kernel of brain-machine interface, okay? And fast forward to about 20 years, this is actually an array of about 100 electrodes implanted over a human's motor cortex. Now, this particular person was a tetraplegic and therefore, could think about movement but could not execute because that person had a cut in the spinal cord, okay? And shown here, and I hope this works, is the outcome of this sort of research, okay? And so this is a woman who again cannot,
for the first time,
use her
gave us all
muscles,
pause.
but can think about movement.
She reached out with the robotic arm. She thought about the use of her own hand. She picked up that thermos of coffee, brought it close to her, tilted it towards herself.
Got a bunch of electrodes here.
Sipped coffee
they
from a straw.
record her intentionality.
And that was the first time in nearly 15 years that she
then
picked up
use
anything
a robot
and been able to drink from it solely of her own volition.
There was a moment of true joy, true happiness.
Right? It's quite remarkable. And the technology is still developing. In fact, this is somebody else's work, but yeah, I mean, this is quite amazing how basic research, 20 years, so it does take some amount of, vision and, keeping with the program to get here, right? And in fact, this is basically the same technology that Elon Musk, he's all over the news here, but he started a company called Brain Neuralink, and essentially that company is doing the same thing, right? It's doing it smarter, better, and so on and so forth. But the kernel is based on this. And again, there are various ways in which you can do brain-machine interfacing, BCIs, and so on and so forth. You can use different modalities like EEG, EMG, and stuff like that. But at the core is, this idea of pulling out intentionality from the human brain. Okay, and again, it has spawned a whole ecosystem of companies, and some of them are, again, as I said, billion-dollar companies. Now, I will, in the remaining part of my talk, I will talk about some of the work that we have done in the lab, okay? That's really, again, fundamentally geared towards basic neuroscience, but I think it has some applications which I'll highlight towards the end, okay? And so this is in the area of neuro AI, okay? And the idea here is to draw inspiration from engineering, that is neuroscience draws inspiration from engineering, particularly in the branches of robotics and AI. And in turn, the idea is that neuroscience, actually, by just studying it as basic neuroscientists, can provide sort of the fountainhead of interesting ideas to the engineering stream. And the idea is having this positive feedback can kind of generate some interesting stuff. And hopefully, you'll see some of this here. And so, there's me, a neuroscientist, a basic neuroscientist, studies eye movements and so on and so forth. In collaboration with Ghoshal, who's actually a well-known roboticist at IIC, and Aditya Gilra, my namesake, who is actually a machine learning theorist. And of course, this all is not possible without a very bright and crazy student from bioengineering. So our institute has a bioengineering program, and Saurabh is the one who's really done the heavy lifting and actually done this work as part of his PhD thesis. And so what Saurabh did was to design a deep network, okay, engineer a network in some sense, to drive a physics engine, okay, that is in silico at this point, via what are called motor commands to muscles, okay, artificial muscles, and also receive sensory feedback, okay, and so you've got this sort of recurrent network that essentially is trying to mimic how the human motor system would work. Now, we drew inspiration from decades of basic research in computational motor control that looks at motor behavior very, very carefully to understand the algorithms and computations that must underlie simple movements, okay? And I'll just give this in a broad nutshell. So the idea is, in our brains, we have goals. These goals eventually need to be converted to motor commands, okay? And this conversion happens via this computation called an inverse model, okay? This computation, these motor commands, then impinge on the muscles, they activate the muscles, cause the state of the body to change, okay? This state change is measured by the sensory system after some delay, and then it's sent back to the inverse model that updates its motor commands. And so you've got this closed loop, okay, that actually generates motor behavior. Now, because these delays are actually substantial, it puts a lot of burden on these inverse models because they have to generate motor commands that are, over a reasonably long period of time. Now, to mitigate this problem, okay, the idea here is that these motor commands, a Xerox copy of these motor commands is actually sent, it's called an efference copy, to another internal model called a forward model that actually predicts the sensory consequences of these motor commands. It just inverts, in some ways, what this computation does, okay? And that's why they have the term forward and inverse models, okay? They eventually get integrated with sensory feedback and produce an estimate of the current state which updates the motor command very rapidly in real time, okay? So the question is, how do you actually train these internal models from scratch, okay? And we took inspiration from this idea of motor babbling and how kids actually learn speech as they develop, okay? But this applied it to movements instead. And the idea here is that in the fetus itself, in prenatal development, fetuses actually make just random movements, okay? They babble, okay? And that's why they kick and, and which one can actually feel. So that's one stage of motor learning. A second stage we call goal-directed babbling, where the kids still haven't acquired, control of their body apparatus, but they do goal-directed babbling. And the final stage is what is called goal-directed behavior. Okay, so you have this three-stage learning process, and so we try to sort of emulate this in these neural networks. Okay, and so the idea is initially we had a model that had no idea how to produce motor commands. So it would just produce random babbles, motor commands, that would drive this physics engine to produce sensory consequences, right? It would move. We used the idea of efferent's copy to send this to a forward model that predicts the sensory consequences. Now initially, these motor commands are random, right? And this forward model is not trained. So it will produce a mismatch between these two, okay, which essentially we use this error, supervised learning, to update this forward model. Did it actually learn, right? And that's the first stage. So that's random babbling. Then once we had a trained forward dynamics model, we did what is called goal-directed babbling. We just asked the system we created a system where this artificial agent was able to just move randomly in external space. And we added this module, the inverse dynamics, that produces the motor command in front of this. And what we did is, because this is now trained, we fixed this and we trained the inverse dynamics model. Okay? So all the errors now that are produced is a consequence of an untrained inverse model. And so then we got this trained to some extent. And this is called goal-directed babbling. And finally, in the third stage, where we generated goal-directed movements in 1-dimensional, 2 dimensions, and 3 dimensions. Okay? And for this, we trained both these inverse and forward dynamics. Okay? Don't worry about the details here, but it's basically based on the same idea I told you before, to actually generate goal-directed movements. Okay? Then we engineered in the same fashion, when you're doing movements, you have to actually generate kinematics and dynamics. We were able to generate inverse and forward kinematics. In this way, we actually engineered an entire agent from absolutely scratch, okay, from really ground zero. And here is the final result here. So you're making a movement, a goal-directed movement, and we have this system trained. Okay, so we engineered this, and it, is able to do exactly how humans make movements. Now, as a neuroscientist, yeah. So here here we actually give it a target, and we actually set a trajectory here. In this case. So yeah, so in some ways we right now create the goals. Yeah, that's part we're doing. We're doing the stuff after that. So as a neuroscientist, it was my primary reason to get into this area, is to actually interrogate these individual artificial neurons, right? This is one of the big challenges in AI, right? And its incorporation ethically in many things, right? Which is explainable AI, right? We don't understand how the AI actually works. It's basically a black box, right? A fancy multi-regression machine, and it's dangerous when it has to make ethical decisions. So part of this was to actually understand how this inverse model in this case actually does it work in a way similar to what we see in monkeys, and thereby we can understand, open in some ways the black box of AI. And so that was the sort of one of the rationales of doing this work. And you can see that we're able to find neurons in this inverse dynamics model that actually resembles, okay, qualitatively the neurons that were discovered ages ago in non-human primates, right? And so we think we have this inverse dynamics network, okay? Now, where's the application? Now, this is future work. And so the idea here is that let's say if you have a lesion in the brain due to stroke, right, in your motor cortex. The idea here is perhaps you can train this AI system using the same sort of approaches that I talked to you about, where you can actually get input from an area prior to where the lesion is, like the premotor cortex, for example. And then either via brain stimulation, we can actually bypass, literally, like how surgeons do a coronary bypass. We can just bypass the bad area and then feed in commands to substitute this damaged part of the cortex. And we can then bypass it in different levels, right? So if you have a lesion in the spinal cord, you can bypass that. And so the idea, and this is stuff that's very current here, is to actually develop this, what is called a coprocessor based on AI, right? And this coprocessor need not just interface with the brain, but it could actually directly give current or voltages to the muscles themselves, and also a external control device, like an exoskeleton. This part is actually happening right now, right? And so there are companies that have AI-driven exoskeletons and actually get trained in this manner and fit the individual human, right, that is trained on. But these aspects have not yet happened, okay? And so that's like our future aims here from this line of work, okay? So I hope I've sort of, given you a walkthrough of how basic research, right, which you may not think is very consequential in terms of, its use in technology, can play a huge, huge role, right, in developing entire ecosystems, as well as, of course, help curing, what we think are intractable diseases. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Professor Murthy. May I please request AVM Sinha sir to come on stage and felicitate Professor Murthy.
Actually, sir, I already have a cap.
You have a cap?
Yes, and so I'll take that.
Okay.
But I mean, I don't want to say no, but
Yeah, you can have another one.
they kindly gave this to me in the
But
colloquial.
you can give to your counter. You're given.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm very happy to announce that Shri Gokul Butel ji, Principal Advisor to Chief Minister Himachal Pradesh, Innovation, Digital Technologies and Governance, rank of Cabinet Minister, he is with us as a guest of honor for this conclave. I would like to heartily welcome Shri Gokul Butel ji. May I request Mr. Somjit Amrit, AVM Sinha sir, Shubhajit Roy Chaudhary sir to please come on stage and felicitate Shri Gokul Butel ji. We also have with us Mr. Sunil Sharma, HAS, Special Secretary, Technical Education, Government of Himachal Pradesh. Thank you very much, sir, for taking out time from your extremely busy schedule and be with us here. Thank you so much. Kindly come on stage, sir. Professor Syed Abbas, if you're in the audience, please come on the stage. Professor Abbas, I request you to please felicitate Mr. Sunil Sharma. Thank you, everyone. I kindly request Shri Gokul Butel ji to address the gathering. Thank you.
Respected Mr. Somjit Amrit, who is the CEO of IIT Hive and the HCI Foundation. Professor Shubhajit Roy Chaudhary, Project Director, IIT Hive. Air Marshal Pranay Kumar Sinha ji, who is the Director of IIT Hive and Strategic Advisor to IIT Mandi. Mr. Sunil Sharma, who is the Special Secretary, Technical Education, Government of Himachal Pradesh. All other dignitaries present here, the industry leaders, members of the press. First of all, I would like to welcome you all to our wonderful state, people who have come from across, the industry leaders, and the other people who are involved in this Hive 2.0. Before coming to this hall, I had about an hour conversation with Mr. Somjit Amrit, who is the CEO of IIT iHub, and he was telling me why this event is very important and how industry is collaborating with this institution, and it is a major milestone that how academia and industries combine together and bring out the best of innovation. This is my fourth or fifth visit to IIT Mandi, and it is always very good to be here. It opens new perspective for somebody like me, and it's very important for us policymakers and politicians also to be amongst you in the academia, because all of us are working in different silos. And events like Hive 2.0 gives us a platform where we get to know what the new research, what the new cutting edge innovation is being done. And even with the industry's presence here, the industry would tell you the convergence of the technology, what the industry requires. The biggest problem today, I feel, which we have in our country, in fact in our state, if you try to find skilled people, you don't find it. And on the other hand, you see so much of unemployed people. So if you go to any institution, when I talk to industry leaders, they always tell me that our education system, of course, is bringing people up, but the skill gap still exists. Government of India, Government of Himachal has done a lot of things. They've come up with a lot of programs like the skill development, the skill mission, which was launched many years back, and it's still helping, but I still feel there's a long way to go. When I was having this conversation with Mr. Somjit Amrit, I was telling him that I did my undergraduate studies from the US, and most of my professors in third or the fourth year were all, their title had professor in practice, and all of them used to spend 3 days at the university and 3 days at another industry location, and they were full-time employees of the university. And as a student also, it was so overwhelming to learn that what is actually happening in the industry. So, and I was very keen and very surprised that at IIT also, this thing is happening. I'm very proud to say yesterday our Honorable Minister for Skill Development was here. When our government came into power in 2022 December, in our ITIs, which is the Industrial Training Institutes for Technical Education, we introduced courses like AI, IoT, even courses for maintenance of solar panels, because this is where the next skilling would be needed. So traditionally, if you go to government ITIs, you would see there are electrician, plumbing, these courses, of course, which are also required. But as this industry is evolving, the state government and the institutes which are responsible for skilling, and the academia also has to evolve its curriculum to meet the industry needs. Last time I was here, I always mentioned to the industrial people out here that Himachal is one of the states which leads innovation throughout the country. Either if it's e-governance, or even I feel we have a huge potential in software innovation and forming new technologies, because our environment is such here that it fosters your critical mindset. Sitting in a big city in Bangalore or Gurgaon, there's so many distractions around. I don't think so your mind could be as free as it is here in the mountains in Himachal. So in the coming years, and I'm sure the students also who are at IIT Mandi, they would appreciate the kind of environment that these hills and these pristine nature gives you around here at IIT. So again, I'm looking forward. I hope there are some presentations left. I'm looking forward. I'm told that Samsung Prism program is going to be, they're going to be presenting on what are the real world problems that a company like Samsung or other industry faces. So I'm looking forward to hear the problem statements. And I'm told in the 2 days event, this Hive that took place, where the research and the industry converged, something great will come out of this, and this will benefit the entire institute, as well as I'm sure it will be of very value to the industry. So again, thank you for having me here, and I look forward from hearing you too. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, sir. Totally, the engagement of governments will bring different kind of changes in the academia. Thank you so much. We will now have a quick tea break, and we will gather again in the auditorium at around 12:05 for our next sessions. Thank you very much. Moving on with our next talk, this topic is of my personal interest. I would like to now invite Mr. Sameer Dutt, founder and CEO, Foundation Futuristic Technologies Private Limited. And the topic of his talk is Future-Proofing Public Safety, the Impact of Emerging Technologies in Criminal Justice Systems. Welcome, Mr. Dutt. Over to you.
Thank you. So, good morning to all of you, or rather it's good afternoon now. So, a very good afternoon. And I would like to thank IIT Mandi, Mr. Somjit, and everybody else for inviting me here and looking after me so well. So, thank you for that. Just to give you a little bit of background, I'm a bit of a walkie-talkie. I hope it's okay. Yeah? Okay, perfect. So just to give you a little bit of background, I've been doing all sorts of esoteric stuff for the 30 plus years, and our company Foundation Futuristic Technologies celebrated 25 years last year in the month of June. So we've been doing a lot of interesting stuff for quite a while. We are in the, public safety domain. We build solutions for a safer planet. We work with various government agencies, law enforcement agencies, and different parts of the government, and including Himachal Pradesh. So let's get started. So we're going to talk about how future technologies will make an impact on public safety. So some of the challenges that we face, some of the things that are a bit of a problem and are going to continue to be a problem today. All of us here, we receive calls practically every day, maybe more than one call in a day. They're all trying to, confuse us, and they're all trying to, extract money out of us, and they're all, becoming really criminally minded. In fact, just yesterday, there was this piece of news that one criminal who has been arrested had made 7,700 crore rupees from cybercrime. And he offered, he sent a letter to Dr. Nirmala Sitharaman saying that I will pay tax on this. Please be lenient on me. तो 7,700 करोड़ रुपए कमा चुका है वो, और वो कहता है मैं इस पे टैक्स दे देता हूँ, आप मुझे छोड़ दो. So this is, the extent of the crime that's going on. This is the extent of the rising crime rates as we see them, right? And traditional methods are struggling to keep, catch up with these guys. वो traditional वो होता है ना, मतलब चूहा बिल्ली वाली game, cat and mouse, and we are always chasing one after the other, trying to, get our hands on the criminal. Today, we are struggling, and we are struggling to play catch up, to, catch up with the criminals that are out there. So for us, we have to think differently. We have to use all the new and emerging technologies that are out there to be able to catch up with these criminals. They are all using technology, by the way. The other thing is that most of the law enforcement agencies have budget constraints. And more important than budget are staff shortages. They don't have people who can actually solve crimes for them. They don't have the skill sets. They don't have sufficient number of people, because in India the ratio of people is extremely low. The number of policemen per citizen is roughly 1 to 1 lakh citizens. Whereas in other countries, like the UK and all, you will find that ratios will vary like, 1 to 400 citizens and things like that. So, in India, we are really understaffed. Public distrust, yes, we really don't believe in our police forces, and we are extremely concerned that are they for us or are they against us? So what does technology need to do? Enhance efficiency, improve accountability, and strengthen security. Right? So what are the key technologies that are out there? As we can see, there is AI, ML, IoT, blockchain. Everybody knows this, right? But what happens? How is it relevant to law enforcement? We need to increase efficiency and accuracy, public safety, and proactive crime prevention. So how do we do that? There is a concept called predictive policing. How many of you have seen a movie called Minority Report? Okay, 1, 2, 3. Guys, if you haven't seen it, go out and see it. 4. Thank you. So there is a lot of fantasy in that, and there is also a lot of truth in that movie about predictive policing. So these are things that we need to really understand, that policing in the future may be about preventing a crime before it happens. And this has evolved. I'll tell you, when we started out, I went and met, the special commissioner of police in a particular this thing, and I said, sir, we've got this really high-tech technology by which we can, crack the passwords of the criminals. We've got a password breaker which can help us get into the accounts of these criminals. So, he looked at me and he had a small laugh, So he said, we also have a password breaker. And I said, sure sir, what technology are you using? And he had this wicker basket and there was one big bamboo stick lying there. And he said, that is our password breaker. So in those days, that was possible, and there was more flexibility with law enforcement. Today it is not so flexible. I won't say that they are not used, but the use has reduced a lot. And the password breakers of today are a lot different than what were password breakers of that time. So technology has come, is being used, and is being extensively used, and will continue to be used as we go forward. So what we've come to see is that there are some different programs that have been used in different parts of the world, which are a precursor to the technologies that we are going to be using going forward. Now, there are strategic subject lists. So in the city of Chicago, what they did was they came up with something called a SSL, which is a strategic subject list. These are people who have been profiled as, they're high-risk individuals who are responsible for violent crime. They have, brought in certain criteria. They have actually figured out different ways to profile people. And of course, that is also a plus point, and that is also a negative point. So there is some, different viewpoints on this. So what happens is that that there are people from your SSL who are, say, located in a particular area. So the probability of violent crimes happening there are much higher. Suppose that there is a known criminal, like in India we have what are called PO lists, proclaimed offender lists, that we know this fellow is a proclaimed offender. This person lives in this village or this area, and this person's speciality is, let us say, kidnapping for ransom. Now, if you have any kidnapping in the area or in the nearby areas, there is a strong possibility that that fellow might be involved, if he is out on bail or if he is out of prison at this point of time. So because he lives in the area, and this is something that computers can predict. So this is what the SSL is about. Similarly, in Los Angeles, they brought out a program to predict crime hotspots. Now, what's a crime hotspot? A place where crime occurs again and again and again. Many years ago, I was in the UK and we were visiting this fusion center of the Cambridgeshire police. Now, and uniquely, for the ladies here, it was staffed by almost 100% women. They were the analysts who were analyzing the crime. It was a fantastic place. Even now, we don't have, those kind of centers yet. But what they had was, they had systems by which they would overlay crime data with other technical data, all on one over the other, and they would arrive at some very good conclusions. Some simple, obvious ones. I'll just share one example. So they found that there was regular crime happening in a particular area, crimes against women, So what they did was they overlaid the street lighting data of that area on a map. So they put the crime area on a map and they overlaid that street lighting data on that map, and they realized that there was insufficient lighting in that area. So they did a simple thing. They increased the lights in that area and immediately the crime dropped. So it is these simple things that can create huge impacts. And these are some of the things that, you look at when you're predicting crime, when you're predicting hotspots and things like that. So this is, predictive policing. In fact, there is a tool called PredPol, which is for predictive policing, right? So this is a slightly different area. And what happens is that there are certain concerns. Like in the US, there is racial profiling. So what they will say is that there is a risk of bias in the machine learning algorithms, that they will say that people of a certain ethnicity, that black African origin people commit more crime. So if that racial bias is built into the mind of the person who's programming the machine learning, what will happen is that it will automatically select those guys. or it will, have a further bias towards selecting those people as people who are going to commit a crime. So in such scenarios, what happens? That this racial bias creeps into your algorithm and will affect it. So these are some of the concerns that we have. And then there are always, people don't trust a machine. If a machine comes up and says that this guy is going to commit a crime, or there's a probability that this fellow has committed a crime, and you are unable to say why the machine has come up with that, because it has learnt it over a period of time, are you going to trust the machine? What are you going to do in court? These kind of things are areas of concern for the future. There are some advantages. There is enhanced accuracy. It actually works. It helps. And it is cost effective. The amount of time, effort, and energy that goes into solving a crime is nobody's business. In fact, a lot of these crimes that are not solved are just because of this reason. आप देखते हो ना कि वो फ़ोन पे जो क्राइम करते हैं वो ठगी करके आपसे पैसे ले लेते हैं and things like that. They will send you a code and you will transfer money and then you will say, oh, I made a mistake. That was supposed to send me money, and instead of sending me money, they have taken my money and taken it away. Very common. I mean, in fact, there have been so many scams related to the different events that happen around the country. And people, they will book a hotel, कि भाई हम प्रयागराज जा रहे हैं, इस होटल में रह रहे हैं. They booked a hotel online, वहाँ पहुँच के होटल नहीं मिलता. You've seen that ad, right? So this kind of thing is so common, and government has taken good initiatives to actually publicize these kind of things. But all this activity is hardly ever investigated. अगर 15,000 रुपए खर्च हुए, think about it. You have lost 15,000 rupees. That's hard-earned money. But for the police to recover that 15,000 rupees is going to cost them what? A lot more. So most of those crimes under a lesser threshold are usually not even solved. They may say, yes, we will look into it, we will do this. But practically when you are looking at it, say a phone is stolen, for example. How many times have you recovered a stolen phone? Unless it's some very senior officer's phone, people will not put in the effort and energy because the value of the phone, the physical value of the phone is very less. So when we are using technology to do this, the costs of recovering that become a lot lower, and it becomes cost effective, and the probability of crimes getting solved is higher. Whereas when we are talking about a physical policeman going out searching for a phone, not going to happen. Yeah, sometimes the phones are stolen from say Chandigarh and they are found in the northeast. You think that who's going to cover the cost of his travel going there, coming back? He will get reimbursed after 6 months, if at all. He's not going to bother to go and collect the phone. So just think about it. Cost effectiveness, efficient use of resources. Again, it's really going to help from that perspective. And crime prevention, of course. Properly, if we use AI properly, what's going to happen is that we are going to reduce bias. We will improve speed of decision making, and we will increase accuracy. So these are some of the things that's going to happen when we're going to use that. What about parole? How do you decide this person has been in prison for 4 years, his sentence was 6 years, should he be let go? He has been a model prisoner, he has done no problems, no pangas, no issues while in prison. He has not committed any other crimes. He's not been involved with drug activities. He's not fought with other criminals. He's done what he was told to do. Should we let him go? You see, so there are many factors that determine whether we should keep the fellow in the prison or not. India is suffering. I mean, India has got lots of prisons, but there is not a single prison that is not overcrowded. We catch a criminal, we push him in. Under trials, they're under trials, but they're living there. Government ki roti kha rahe hain. That is what is happening. And the whole idea is that we need to get these fellows, those who stay there become hardened criminals. If there's a first timer, you got him, you put him into prison, what's going to happen? That fellow is going to learn from all the other guys there, and he's going to become a hardened criminal. It's not in the interest of society, it's not in the interest of the nation. So one has to take quick decisions, decide the first time criminal, let's get him out, take a decision, move him out,
and put him back into society, maybe warn him, maybe counsel him, maybe monitor him for a while, right? So those are some of the things, you predict behavior, and of course you reduce overcrowding, as I mentioned. There are different crime trends analysis. We can identify recurring crime patterns, types of crimes, locations of crimes, times of crimes, and things like that. Then, hotspots, where crimes occur. We focus patrols, police patrolling, we should increase in certain areas, for example, in certain parks, for example. So once we identify that, we take that kind of action. And it is being done, but on a piecemeal basis. We need to do this systematically. And behavior analysis, as I discussed. We can even predict case outcomes. So if based on, say, the kind of evidence that is collected, the public prosecutor can decide whether the case is worth taking to court or not. He says that I have got circumstantial evidence, lots of it. Look at the Arushi case. It was totally based on circumstantial evidence, right? So when you have a situation like that and you are stuck that, okay, is it worth the government effort, money, energy to take the case to court and just get a negative outcome? You can actually predict what's going to happen. So one needs to either strengthen the case, look for more evidence, look for more witnesses, look for whatever, and then take the case to the next level. Similarly, you can do criminal profiling. You can detect patterns in criminal behavior, and you can identify potential suspects. So suppose a murder has happened in a particular location and there was only one person present there. So simple logic dictates कि भाई इसी ने किया है. Lekin if you look at other factors and you see, oh, the window was open, or you look at the thing that there was somebody else also in the building, maybe the servant was in the house or whatever. When there are different factors, there can be different aspects, right? So these are all things that come into play. Then machine learning can analyze huge data sets and phone records. You are all carrying mobile phones in your pockets, right? What happens? We built a framework which we call the alibi framework. The activity of your phone allows us to identify, who are your associates, who are the people you talk to the most, who are the people you talk to the longest, your locations, which are the locations you are at the most, where are you during the day, where do you sleep at night, your identity, you may buy a SIM on a fake identity, but you may actually, connect your bank account to this, or you may, book a railway ticket using your phone, right? Or you might, order Domino's pizza using your phone. All these things help us in identifying you. Similarly, your behavior. What is it that you do? Say every Sunday you have a certain plan, or you go to a temple, or you go out with friends. That's behavior. And the last is intention. Oh, you're planning to kidnap somebody, right? So if you're planning to kidnap somebody, so 2-3 days before the event, what you plan to do is you go and visit that scene of the crime, the planned scene of the crime, and you do a recce of the area, you identify what's happening. So that is the intention aspect. So all this can be programmed into these are patterns that we can look for in huge volumes of data. Your phone is constantly pinging servers all over the world. It's accessing Google, it's accessing Akamai, it is accessing Apple, it is accessing a lot of things without doing anything. Why? Because it's responding to some ads, it's responding to, say, operating system updates, it is actually responding to pings, or it is even connecting to time servers to synchronize time and things like that. And that establishes so much information. And then fraud detection. So we can flag unusual financial activities, we can detect financial frauds and things like that. We work with SEBI. You heard of SEBI? Yeah, okay. So, basically what do? They look at huge volumes of NSE and BSE data. And people, tend to defraud the system or defraud the public by, running, pump and dump schemes, increasing prices, doing zero trades or doing self trades, and, trying to drive up prices or drive down prices and control the market in different manners. So these are all patterns, these are all things. This is where AI ML comes in, where they actually shine to understand such things. Now, let's look at the surveillance technology that is out there. Cameras are everywhere, right? There was a time when they were not, but cameras have really increased now. And what we tend to see is that machine learning and artificial intelligence is helping us a lot with computer vision capabilities and things like that. We are able to utilize, say, camera feeds from multiple locations and even look for common faces. So I will give you an example. Say somebody has been kidnapped from point A and there is a camera there. All the people who are present have somehow or the other, sometime or the other, passed through the camera. So we may have, say, something like 300 people during a specified time. Same thing, later on a ransom call has been made, and that has been made from a second location. And again, there may be, a bunch of, say, 700-800 people there. They have also passed from in front of the camera. We did not see who made the call, but we know the people who were present there at the time of the call. Similarly, we did not see who did the kidnapping, but we do know who were the people who were present there at the time of the kidnapping. Let's look for common faces. A person who was there present at the time of the kidnapping, and let the person who was present there at the time of the call, in all probability, may be somebody of interest to us. So again, that is what machine learning excels in. And these are some of the things that we can do. So facial recognition, what happens is that there are so many incidents where police guys are shown as wrong stuff, and cameras, when public cameras or press cameras, when they're focused on something, they will say कि भाई ये पकड़ के बहुत पीट रहा था, ये था वो था and all, but it may not be the whole story. He may be retaliating after being beaten for half an hour before that continuously, and he just managed to get back. So there are so many aspects to the whole exercise, and this is what helps us identify that. Then there is the cybersecurity aspect. Again, the cybersecurity aspect is extremely crucial. The CBI website was hacked. Anybody knows that? Prime Minister's website was hacked. Tamil Nadu police was hacked. Their facial recognition system was hacked. So what happens is, that security is paramount. And if our protectors are being hacked, our own security is extremely weak, comparatively, I would say. So we need to be able to protect sensitive data from breaches, cyber attacks, and you need to ensure the integrity of criminal investigations and the legal processes. Everybody's received a phishing email? Everybody. Now the key thing is that earlier, when we used to most of the time you could guess that they are trying to, luto you. And what would they do? They would send you a mail, I'm Prince so-and-so, I own so much oil, I'm very rich, but I need somebody's help too. That typical Nigerian scam used to be there, though of course they've evolved a lot now. But what has happened? They are using AI, they are using ChatGPT, they are using Ghost GPT, they are writing, wonderful, convincing mails which would be the pride of any top salesperson in any of the top multinationals anywhere. Those mails are so convincing that all you got to do is just click on them, that's all. And that is all thanks to the the different LLMs that are out there, the different technologies that are out there, which are making a serious impact on crime. Crime is increasing like anything because of the believability of what's going on out there. So there are strategies for improvement. We're looking at encryption, incident response plans, and things like that. Yeah. Community engagement, that's another area where public safety is affected. Communication. Today, you had floods here in Himachal Pradesh, and one of the problem statements I heard from somebody who was presenting was that they were not able to disseminate the information fast enough. What happened was that rivers were rising, there were floods happening in one particular area, and somebody about 15 kilometers away was not aware that this was happening. And because of that lack of awareness, things were, creating problems for us. Do we have time? 5 minutes? Okay, perfect. All right. So the key is that we need to be able to facilitate real-time interaction, and online platforms need to be used for this. Report issues, share concerns, get things moving. All right. There are challenges, there are limitations, we all have them. So artificial intelligence and smart policing, this is something that is extremely important from a public safety perspective. Advanced surveillance, we already have it. We have surveillance, it's going to get more advanced, and there's going to be body cameras, drones, facial recognition, biometric tech. So this is going to be used for crime detection and prevention, proactive policing, and smarter resource allocation, right? So I would like to, leave you with this. And there's a lot of stuff I could talk about, but do you have any questions?
He has a question. Can be a bit louder.
Hi. I don't think we have a choice. We are living in accelerated times, People were feeling very happy about NVIDIA's dominance of, GPUs and the US and the first world controlling the artificial intelligence bandwagon. But suddenly that was overturned and upturned, And this is something that is going to happen all the time. We are living in an age of disruption. We are living in an accelerated age. So we have to innovate. Sometimes we catch up. Sometimes we are ahead. Sometimes we innovate in innovative manners to ensure that we can beat those guys at their own game. And we do at times. So I would say that it is a process. In fact, earlier when they started out, the criminals, they were taking all their money and laughing all their way to the bank. And now we have the ability to stop money on the way to the bank, from one bank to another, and so on and so forth. So what we are seeing is that things are happening. We are seeing things, we are responding to things, and we are also foreseeing things. And we are using the technology to do that. Anything else? Yes? You'll need to speak up a little louder. You're really...
Hello.
Yeah.
So I'm Yukta from the Integrated MBA batch. My question is that why is India not actually catching up with all these trends? Because the cost of accommodating all these prisoners is way higher than what it would take to actually implement this thing.
See, why is a difficult question to answer. But I will say that how can you say that India is not catching up to this?
Because the crime rates are not going down, right?
Yeah, I'll say that crime rates are going up much faster than what we are catching up with. But I will say that from a criminal investigative capability perspective, India is actually moving up the scale really fast compared to a lot of countries across the world. In fact, I was speaking at a conference in the US, and very interestingly, I was showcasing some developments that we had done in India, and we were doing some case studies, and it was a short 30-minute talk, Once I finished, there was nobody asking any questions, so I thought maybe they didn't understand it, maybe it was my accent, maybe what I said was, too low tech for them or whatever. So I stepped outside the hall, and more than half the hall emptied out, and they all came outside with me. And then they began to ask me, you said you are from India? I said, yes. They said, how did you get this technology? I said, we developed it in-house. They said, no, but India is not perceived as a technology-capable country in this criminal investigation area. I said, look, you have to understand one thing. We have at that time it was 1.2 billion people. We have 900 million cell phones. And everybody and their dog has a cell phone practically. And the cost of a call was close to zero. Reliance to Reliance calls was practically zero. And I said that we don't have very sophisticated DNA databases. We did not have too many CCTV cameras at that time. We did not have a very national fingerprint database. We do not have a ballistic database. The only thing that we have is technical capability to analyze phone calls, and it was about phone calls at that time. So we have to be damn good, because this is the only way we can actually go about catching criminals, and that was just about at that time the only way we could do it. So there are certain areas where we are very good. There's certain areas where we are very bad, certain areas where we are catching up. So don't say India is behind, but we are on it.
Okay, that's interesting, sir. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Anybody else? MBBS, people at the back, members of the Backbenchers Society?
So your talk is very interesting. I'm doing PhD, and I'm associated with the Hive as well. We have some project in legal. So like, why I want to ask this question? My father is advocate, so I have little bit of technical legal knowledge, and I'm doing PhD. So as your perspective, because you're forensic and crime perspective, and I have exposure to these things because of my father, you can say. So I want to ask from your perspective, technique in legal form. Technology, your forensic in legal domains, that I want to ask. Because nowadays...
Are you asking me, does it exist? Are you asking me, is it required?
Towards more implementation.
Sorry?
Towards more implementation.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. In fact, today with the 3 new laws that have come up, BNS, BNSS, etc.
And just some people when judges take decision, they sometimes judgmental. When technology takes decision, it is non-judgmental. So how we can cope up with this thing in this domain?
Would you prefer that your sentence was read by a computer or if it is read by a judge?
I'm not experienced to say this thing, but I am asking your perspective.
So, I think it's fairly common that a human prefers that some human sentences you. That is as of now.
Nowadays,
but maybe it will change going forward. Definitely, the LLMs today that exist are something that can be used from a legal perspective as well. If you look at it from, say, judgments, if previous cases, case law and everything was fed into LLM, and also all the laws were fed into LLM, and then a particular case was sort of, again, queried against, I'm sure we would come up with a lot of interesting results and things that could have been overlooked, which the LLM should produce. So I think that's a great way to go forward.
So I was one discussion that even the constitutions are also feeding into the models so that they can take proper decision in that.
It's a great thing, and it is required.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. In the interest of time, I think I would like to stop this here, the Q&A session, and maybe we can take, if there are any more questions, we can take them offline. Yeah. So thank you, Mr. Sameer Dutt, for this interesting talk. And now I would like to request K.R. Venkatadri sir to come on stage and felicitate Mr. Dutt.
So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, sir. We are in the last leg of this conclave, and we are moving towards the last session for Hive 2.0. We have Dr. Tigmanshu Bhatnagar with us. He has connected online. He's a lecturer of computer science at University College London, UK. He'll be talking about empowering accessibility, partnerships for a more inclusive tomorrow. Dr. Bhatnagar, are you there? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
I can hear you.
Yeah. Over to you, Dr. Bhatnagar. Thank you.
Is that going to be visible over there?
Yes.
You able to see?
Yes, it's visible.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. As a challenge. So GDI Hub is basically two things. It's an academic research center where we conduct research in understanding the life of persons with disabilities, the challenges in developing assistive technologies. But we're also a community interest company, which is like a Section 8 company in India that does consultancy work for various different clients to promote access and inclusion to persons with disabilities. And these includes the Asian Development Bank. So we recently worked with a number of banks in Asia Pacific to improve their disability culture within the bank, both for employees with disabilities as well as the customers. We are the collaborating center on assistive technology with the World Health Organization. So we do a lot of research together with the WHO in supporting decisions that govern policies. There are a number of other clients that are interested in improving access to healthcare and assistive technologies, such as the Clean Health Access Initiative, where we work in conducting research for specific programs that they later on deliver. So as a company, that our prime mandate is to understand what works, while as an academic research center here at UCL, we run a master's program called MSc Disability Design and Innovation. So we are able to train a number of people in producing and working in this sector every year at an MSc level here. We also have PhD students. I was a PhD student at the center where I developed new technology for refreshable tactile displays. We have postdoctorate researchers working on multiple projects as well as core academic staff. It was launched in 2016 and has a legacy of the Paralympic Games. So the people who created the inclusive infrastructure of the 2012 London Paralympics here, were the ones who sort of came together to build GDI Hub. And now it's operational in over 40 countries with a number of partners and has impacted over 35 million people. So we're very proud of the kind of work that we are doing across globally. And it's been delivered by a small but growing team that has diverse expertise in coming in from the corporate world, but also from research, social science, justice, politics, in design, engineering, architecture. So as disability spans all walks of life, we have the privilege to work across a multidisciplinary team that has its focus on improving the life of persons with disabilities at a global scale. So one of the projects that we did together with our collaborators in India at IIT Delhi and IIT Madras was Atwaran, an accelerator for assistive technology startups in India. Now, as we all know, India is a startup nation with a lot of people choosing startup as their career options. I'm sure some of you in the audience would also be thinking about how could you start a business of your own. And a few of us do start a business within the disability space, so supporting persons, the life of persons with disabilities. So in this 6-month accelerator program, we supported 20 such initiatives, 20 companies across 3 stages. So these companies were either very early, so they haven't made their sales yet, but still in their prototyping stages, but had a registered company and were committed to deliver their assistive technology solutions. So these were spark startups, really getting started. There were some companies who had started in the past 2 to 3 years and were trying to accelerate their innovation, their scale up their operations, their production and other things to really establish a strong business. And then there were some companies who have been in the market for over 5 years now, but were expanding through a new product archetype or a new business model or into a new geography. So across these 20 startups and these 3 stages, we had a very good diversity of companies. So from a research point of view, where we really like to come, we could really truly understand what the space is looking like for these startups, from the point of which they start to their scaling objectives. And the main purpose of the accelerator here in this situation was to improve the product market fit for assistive technology startups. That meant that how can the devices and solutions be made in such a way that it actually impacts the end user. And for that, what our job was to bring a very fragmented disability innovation ecosystem in India together, which includes a number of stakeholders who are usually not so communicative with each other. As a business sector, this is not a space which is actually thriving compared to some of the other spaces. Assistive devices, for reference, includes products like wheelchairs, walking aids, ramps, mobility devices, prosthetics, eyeglasses, hearing aids, and other such solutions that usually we see people with disabilities tend to use. But in this particular program, the 20 startups that we had produced a number of different innovations in this particular space. So startup, for example, VDs, produces clip-on kits to wheelchairs so that a manual wheelchair can be converted into a powered electric wheelchair. Binoculon Labs is developing smart glasses for people with visual impairment so that they can use computer vision technology to see and understand the objects around us. Now, we heard about computer vision just a few minutes ago, a wonderful speech before it, which was really very exciting and very eye-opening. So, building upon that AI element, there is Hive Plus that is using mapping for mapping out indoor spaces using Bluetooth beacons and positioning systems to support people with visual impairments in getting last mile, end-to-end, independent mobility. Within the mobility space, a startup called Thrive Mobility was working on India's lightest wheelchair. So an 8 kilogram wheelchair that is easy to, can be easily portable so that a person can put a wheelchair in their car or something like that and be mobile without a big hassle, because the current lightest wheelchair in India weighs around 16 kilos. So, but moving on to, we also had startups that were working for people with communication disabilities or people with cognitive disabilities such as ADHD, children with ADHD and on the autism spectrum. So as you can see that the pool of startups that we selected and shortlisted for this particular program were working on a diversity of problems addressing the community today. And as they were already doing this, our job really was to accelerate whatever they were doing so that whichever challenge and objective they had for the next 6 months, we try to make it happen as quickly and as early as possible by investing a little bit on crystallizing that defragmented ecosystem around them and giving them this sort of jetpacks to overcome the barriers quickly. And as part of this process, we learned a couple of things. I'll share those learnings first before moving into really explaining about the program further. The first things, and it's something that we all in this particular space really understand as a core challenge, is that in India, around 6.33 crore people live with a disability. But very few, only 1 in 10 people out of this figure actually have access or have that assistive technology that they actually need. So there's a big number of, there's a very large population that does not have the assistive technology that they actually require or does not have the access to it. There are a number of reasons, but the top reasons is a very low purchasing power for a majority of the population who's living with a disability. Now, from Amartya Sen's capability approach, we understand the economics around disability to be of a double barrier, where having a disability at the first increases the cost of living for an individual, because they would have to invest in these devices and solutions and perhaps need a full-time caregiver in order to live with a disability properly. Now, this increases the burden on the family and hence reduces their economic capabilities. But at the same point of time, a person with disability is less likely to have a high-paying job. So this again creates an economic situation within the family where a person has these kind of double barriers, of eventually resulting in a very low purchasing power for such devices. So there is a very heavy dependence among people with disabilities on provisioning systems that could provide assistive technologies for free through industry collaborations, through the government, or now if people are learning and are able to use the smartphone through such digital devices. And there are a lot of market constraints because of the perception around this particular space. There's very little investment that goes in. There are not a lot of people who choose disability innovation as a part of their careers. And the market is filled with products that are not super fit for purpose. There is little innovation compared to the rest of the fields within this particular space. So there is a very high need. We see 9 out of the 10 people do not have access to the assistive technology they need. But user demand and financial sustainability of this entire space is a major challenge. And this is a paradox for startups. They face a market with a very high need, but the demand within the market and the financial sustainability of that particular company is dubious and poor. The second key insight, if you look at the some sort of pipeline for funding that exists in this space, a lot of ventures do start off from free money, such as grant of philanthropic funding for their prototyping and reaching their first 100 users. With that, there is a large pool across India called the CSR, or Corporate Social Responsibility. And I'm pretty sure most of you know and are aware about CSR funding that provides support to provision assistive technologies. So there are multiple programs that can support startups to fund their production and scale in order to create an impact so that the devices reaches the end user. So that's the way in which they sort of scale their business to reach the first 1,000 users. Beyond which, there is a line of credit from the bank so that they can create better production spaces, or investment from angel or institutional investors so that they can scale up their business even further. Within the assistive technology space, there is a major barrier after the CSR funding strikes. So CSRs usually would like a direct impact rather than business sustainability of the startup. They are more interested that the device gets to the user and the user is able to benefit from it, rather than seeing what profit margins can a startup actually derive from. And for fair reasons, the mandate is slightly different. But the CSR funding becomes one of the sole areas where assistive technology startup can generate revenue from, or can generate their capital from. So the CSR funding usually goes into accelerator and incubator programs where startups in this space circulate from one accelerator to another, and they look out for this kind of capital. Now that's an unsustainable model which is circulating itself basically. So we see very few businesses just moving from one to another in order to look out for that capital. Because there are very few mergers or acquisitions that happen in this space, as there are no large companies that are profitable enough that could absorb some of these assistive technology startups that are coming out. Plus, on an investment side, there is a perception that there's very low returns around assistive technology because the market demand is poor. There would be long payback periods if an investment has been made from an impact point of view in this particular space. And there is always a very high customer acquisition cost because the end user is either not aware of the technology or does not see the right fit for that innovation in their life. So a very small percentage of the entire population that actually needs that assistive technology is able to afford and are aware about such things that exist. So it's a perpetual cycle of living on grant and CSR funding for these startups. The third key insight, and a very important one, is that assistive technology is not necessarily perceived as a positive investment for a better life. We as individuals would love to have the best computers, the best cars, the best places to live, the best degrees, and we see that as an investment in ourselves to improve our lives. But when a person lives with a disability in a village in a tier 2, tier 3 city, because of the social construct around disability that, okay, what are you going to do now? Any investment that could create a better life through an assistive technology is not perceived as something that they need, because they haven't dreamt, they haven't aspired to actually do something, and therefore they need something in order to achieve that. The awareness and opportunities for people with disabilities as a social construct are very poor still in our society. That if we don't dream, we won't demand. So this adds up to the customer acquisition cost that becomes higher up. So first of all, we need to unlock people in order to aspire to do things, and once they start visualizing themselves in a certain position or to move up their socioeconomic ladder, then they start demanding, okay, in order to do this, I need something. And that's where assistive technology comes in. So this is a very systematic underlying problem that undercuts the entire ecosystem. So as part of the program, and coming back to it, these 20 companies underwent multiple boot camps to improve their business model refinement, such as their pricing strategies and market entry plans. We were provided with a lot of infrastructure for product innovation, including access to users for feature improvements, accessibility enhancements, and other things that they could do in their business. We also hosted multiple events across different parts of the country to expand the networks of these ventures, improve their connections with the key ecosystem stakeholders that are already out there, major NGOs in the country, various different corporates who could provide both funding as well as technical support, as well as through investor pitch days and demo days that happened as part of this program. There were 3 demo days that were hosted, which included over 20 investors as part of this particular program. And parallel to those demo days, we also hosted a number of roundtables where CSR donors and other people who are key stakeholders in this ecosystem came together to discuss how we can increase funding, how we can unlock and challenge some of the barriers that I just mentioned above. In addition to this, we also provided avenues for these startups to be more visible, such as in venues like the Bangalore Tech Summit, the TIE Bangalore Conference, Sika Conference in Delhi, Zero Project, Empower, so both, and the Purple Fest. So both disability-specific events where we piggybacked certain, pitch festivals or some sort of roundtables where there was a critical mass gathering around this ecosystem, and in other mainstream events that celebrates entrepreneurship and startups. So this kind of an exposure and visibility to such events really benefited the startups from creating new network, identifying key spaces for innovations and multiple new collaborations. So there are some glimpses from these events where we collaborated with over 40 ecosystem partners in order to execute these events, giving exposure to some of these startups, benefiting from and engaging with the end user through these event spaces, but also various different funders who could support the growth of these ventures. People from the ministry also interacted and were exposed to some of these technologies that are being developed so that they can potentially be included in the ministry spaces for further distribution. But young startups met existing startups in order to really understand how business strategies grew. But we also supported various different initiatives that the startups were actually doing by themselves. If you remember the jetpack, so they were already doing a lot, and we were able to provide them with the right support, whichever was needed according to their needs at that point of time. For example, we supported the distribution drive of a startup and kind of like ways in which they could voice their opinions out in social media. So as part of the program, we didn't provide any direct funding to any of the startup, but we created spaces where they could raise their funding from the local Indian market. So they secured a lot of funding to reduce their costs of the technologies, to enhance their products and features, to do their product development and testing. And there was also exposure to various different global markets by inviting guest speakers from around the world who could provide that bit of exposure to the ventures. A lot of investment was raised for R&D team expansion, regulatory approvals. In specific, over $130,000 were raised in terms of grants by the startups, over $150,000 in terms of investment from various angel and venture capitalists were raised or were promised, and discussions are currently ongoing for raising that bit of investment for these companies. And some of the companies also went on to create networks that sort of led to purchase orders worth over $250,000. Some of those ventures were also provided support for international scale through various different channels and disrupt sort of like the high cost of assistive technologies in these various international ecosystems and produced many new business-to-business partnerships. So from this particular exposure, what we learned about the Indian ecosystem is that with the right strategies, India is really poised to lead the global AT startup sector. It can really create many good innovations in this particular space for the entire world. But there are certain blockages. In terms of further analyzing what are typical assistive technology startup growth characteristics, we identified that there are many adjacencies within an assistive technology business that overlaps with other markets. For example, if a startup is creating smart glasses that can help blind people, they are basically using an underlying technology and computer vision that could be useful for maybe making doorbells for blind people so that they can identify the person who's outside without necessarily having to engage things. So diversifying the business with the underlying technology and identifying adjacencies and overlaps in some other growing markets is one way to increase growth and potentially investment within the company. Startups can also look at mainstreaming their solution so that it becomes a consumer good rather than a very specific niche product for a market. So there's a startup called We Hear, which makes bone conduction headphones that are very useful for people with both some form of hearing impairment, people with visual impairment, so that they can apply the bone conduction earphones and still be able to hear the environment. But at the same time, it's a technology that anyone else in the world can also use. So such assistive technologies that has some sort of a mainstream application is also another way in which a startup in this particular space can grow. We also observed that many startups were converting their service delivery models into some sort of products using digital infrastructures. So maybe a chatbot that can be a personal sort of a tutor to train people, or some sort of a MOOC that instead of a person's time, a large amount of information and engagement is done through an app. So these kind of productization of services reduces the cost but increases the market availability and penetration for any of these assistive services. And the fourth one is expanding into international markets. The CSR funding route and the grants that startups usually see themselves circulating in really just funds whatever is in the Indian market. And Indian market is really good for development and testing of assistive technologies, but not a very suitable market for growing it, where other markets have infrastructures that could pay the profit margins that these startups really look out for. So internationalization is a major area for growth for these ventures, but it is still something that we are struggling to penetrate and properly do. There are very few startups that are in India that service the international markets, and most of them overcome that sort of CSR bubble and are able to access better investment and funding. So that remains to be the bottleneck, funding in this space. Very little investor awareness, education, lack of awareness from the end user is a bottleneck. Plus the pipeline. We need more people in this particular space doing research, addressing the challenges from the very beginning, from the grassroots level, and getting into the market from that point of view. So in order to change narratives here, we can convert low purchasing power or address that by generating more new affordable assistive technology innovations. So it's an open call to all of you to see this field as a potential as well, and to be able to design and develop new technologies that have a severe impact in a person's life. When people depend on provisioning systems, they are dependent on the devices that the person who's in power and has the capital is provisioning. So if a CSR wants to provision a wheelchair technology, people only who can make sense and use that wheelchair are only included in that sort of distribution and provisioning of assistive technology. So from that, we need to convert it into a need-based provisioning system so that the person or the end user has that option of choice, that they can access or get a device whichever they choose or like. So that kind of systems do not still exist in our country. Plus, the market constraints, we need to open up the markets once again by utilizing some of the growth tactics that I just mentioned, through mainstreaming solutions to identifying adjacencies or through international expansion. So if you come back to this pipeline of funding, as I mentioned, we need more innovations that can increase the pipeline, that can happen through student challenges and better support for grassroots innovations. CSR funding can be better utilized for impact through multiple, so that we can see how impact is being supported through innovations. There can be many more opportunities to grow and scale through mission and investment. So, scaling new partnerships, fostering strategic and necessary capital investment, and strengthening networks to the grassroots together is the way to go ahead. What we realized is it's not that difficult. If we just come together and collaborate and do it in the right way, we know where the problems lie. We just need to execute things now. So with that, I'd like to conclude the talk, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Bhatnagar. Any questions from the audience?
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, myself Harsh Kumar from MBA second year. So my question is like making a startup or doing a business for specially disabled peoples or any sort of business is like, it is challenging but not impossible to make. But the major problem what it is in the society at large is like we see disabled people from a different perspective or end, or a family member who is disabled, people generally don't want to invest in as much in them, like they are already being seen as a different individual with a different capability, or means like talking in a normal sense, they are seen as abnormal people or not able to have a ability to do the task as a regular person is doing or an individual is doing. First is that. And second is from the disabled people perspective, he is seeing himself as being like not being able to cope up with or do his potential work as an individual who is normal. So at that perspective, what are the challenges, or what means like at societal level, we have to work in that direction also to make an impact. Like doing business is a different thing. You make a product, sell it, or do journal like marketing or these and that things to scale it up or do a startup out of that. But at societal level also, we need to inculcate these things into the mind of the people, both the disabled one also and in the family which he is growing also. So what we need to do in that?
So I'll give you two examples here. In my research, with people with visual impairments who were studying in schools, there was one individual who came saying that when I was in 11th, I wanted to study math, and the school was a government school at that point of time. Basically, they were under the opinion that okay, out of these 20 students, 19 will probably pass, this one is not going to make it. So the attitude of the school was already very disheartening and negative for the person who was visually impaired in that inclusive school. And by policy, our government really mandates that people with disabilities are put into mainstream schools so that the education is free and fair for everyone. Now, what happened is that this particular individual really went out of the way in order to study things by himself. He used to record all these classes because he couldn't see the blackboard and other things. And then he, went out to work together with his friends, utilizing their social capital in order to learn things, and he came second in his class. So these kind of stories do showcase the resilient nature of people, because they are also humans and they can do whatever we can do. But the thing is that they have to sort of showcase this super ability in some ways in order to actually survive. So not every individual can do it, and that's where challenges lie. So by seeing such examples, there are areas where things can actually change. For instance, is a very important space where narratives around disabilities can change, because here we see individuals not as disabled or less worthy of, they are competitors. They are competing and giving their best in an environment where their disability is not at the forefront, but their will, their commitment, their ability to compete. So Paralympics and promoting sports as a medium to change the narratives around disability, seeing that as a potential investment in life and as a place where our society can actually grow and bring laurels back to the country, could be another way in which we can address these challenges. But it's a major societal problem that exists around the world. You know, it's something that we all are tackling through many different ways, and one solution or multiple solutions does not, won't fit everything. So we see different strategies being employed by different countries at a policy level, but also people at the grassroots level to increase their resilience and to shift the narratives around disability. As a society, I think we just need to be more aware and conscious that they are also part of our world, and people with disabilities are not too separate. Maybe some of you are there in the room, I'm not sure, but if they're not, we must not forget that discussion as well.
Thank you. There's another question.
Hello, I am Vikramjit Singh Man. I am basically RCA registered psychologist and running a NGO Safe and Rehabilitation Society. The main problem is as per new education policy जो gap है ना, basically startups disability पे काफ़ी कुछ बना चुके हैं, पर parallelly education भी हमें aware करना जरूरी है और assessment tools को भी parallel लेके आना जरूरी है, उसी तभी ये चीज़ें possible हो पाएंगी. और ग्रास रूट लेवल पे डिफरेंट एनजीओज के साथ टाइप करके स्टार्टअप को हम ग्रास रूट लेवल पे उसको लेके जा सकते हैं. इस पे हम रिक्वेस्ट है, अभी कोई ऐसा प्रोविजन हो तो ज़्यादा बेटर है. थैंक यू.
थैंक यू इस सजेशन के लिए. कई सारे स्टार्टअप सही बात है कि एजुकेशन में भी बहुत सारे आ रहे हैं और नए नए प्रोडक्ट्स बन रहे हैं, क्योंकि वो डायरेक्टली एंड यूज़र को देखते हैं. और हम वही पॉइंट यही है कि हमें साथ में थोड़ा काम और करना होगा इस पूरे सेक्टर में, जहाँ पे एनजीओज, स्टार्टअप्स और जो एंड यूज़र है वो साथ मिलकर के सॉल्यूशंस बनाएं. कोशिश यही है कि ऐसे अपॉर्चुनिटीज़ क्रिएट किए जाएं, पर ऐसे एवेन्यूज़ जहाँ पे कि ये सब मिल कर के काम कर सके वो बहुत कम है. आज के टाइम पे आईआईटी दिल्ली और आईआईटी मद्रास और निश ट्रिवेंड्रम में एनकैट्स या नेशनल सेंटर फॉर असिस्टिव हेल्थ केयर टेक्नोलॉजीज़ हैं. और पूरे देश में 3 सेंटर्स हैं जहाँ पे कि इनोवेशन को किसी तरीके से सपोर्ट मिल रहा है. कई सारे और कॉलेजेस में छोटे छोटे सेंटर्स हैं, पर वो क्या काम कर रहे हैं, कैसे काम कर रहे हैं, उनका बहुत विजिबिलिटी नहीं है. तो ऐसे एरियाज और एवेन्यूज़ जैसे अटल इनोवेशन सेंटर्स बने हैं हर शहर में, उसी तरीके से अगर हम डिसेबिलिटी इनोवेशन सेंटर्स बना सकें जहाँ पे कि लोकल एनजीओज, एंड यूज़र्स और वहाँ के लोकल स्टार्टअप्स आकर के जैसे जो पॉइंट आपने रेस किया, उन पॉइंट्स को डिस्कस करें और अपने सोल्यूशन में निकाल के लेकर आएँ, जो कि ज़्यादा मुश्किल नहीं है, तो वो ज़्यादा सही रहेगा.
Very nicely answered. Thank you, Dr. Bhatnagar, for connecting with us today, and we are hoping to have you in person very soon at IIT Mandi campus. Thank you once again.
Thank you for the opportunity.
This brings us towards the end of the conclave. While we were, enjoying and participating in these expert sessions and talks, there was a set of people who were, sitting diligently and evaluating startups. There were 100 applications from the startup side for the Idea Incubation Challenge, and around 30 were shortlisted for the Idea Incubation Challenge. And I have the results with me now. but I'm waiting for the guest of honor and our director sir to be here so that I can announce. In the meantime, a huge round of applause and huge shout out for our jury members. I would like to call out their names. Mr. KB Rajendran, he's our advisor for entrepreneurship and skill development. Mr. Sameer Dutt, Mr. KR Venkatadri sir, Dr. P. Balamurlidhar, Siddharth Kanungo, Shantanu Srivastava, and Avnish Mishra. I would like to call Shubhajit sir and Venkatadri sir on stage to felicitate our jury members. Okay, Venkatadri sir is one of the jury members, so I cannot call him. May I request Dr. Balwinder Singh, please, to come on stage? First of all, KBR Rajendran sir, please come on stage. Dr. Balamurlidhar P., please come on stage. Thank you, sir. Dr. Balamurlidhar, sir. Yeah, he's here. KR Venkatadri, sir. Mr. Shantanu Srivastava. Oh, okay. Shantanu is not here right now. Mr. Avnish Mishra from TIH team. Thank you. Thank you, sir. I would also like to call out the names of my colleagues who are working tirelessly for making this Idea Incubation Challenge a success. Abhinandan, Deepak, Vishal, Varsh, and Shravan. Huge round of applause for these people. I would request all of you to please wait for some time. Our guest of honor can be here any moment, and then we'll announce the prizes and distribute the awards. Thank you.
In 2077, what makes someone a criminal? Getting caught.
In the heart of Himachal Pradesh, a transformation is taking flight. The IIT Mandi iHub, a beacon of innovation, is empowering the youth, bridging the gap between humans and technology. This is where dreams take shape, where potential is unleashed. Through skill development programs aligned with human-computer interaction, the iHub is creating a ripple effect of change. Lives are being transformed, one skill at a time. The once underprivileged youth are now equipped with the tools to build a brighter future. This is the power of HCI, the impact of the iHub. It's about more than just technology. It's about empowering people, creating opportunities, and building a better tomorrow. IIT Mandi iHub, where innovation meets humanity, where dreams take flight. At IIT Mandi iHub and HCI Foundation, we go beyond training students. We help them land jobs in relevant industries. Our approach not only builds essential skills, but also connects students with potential employers for a brighter future.
मैं पिछले 5 सालों से एक पेशेवर ड्राइवर हूँ। यह डिवाइस मेरे जैसे वाहन चालकों के लिए बेहद सहायक है, खासकर उनके लिए जो सार्वजनिक परिवहन की बसें चलाते हैं। लंबे समय तक लगातार ड्राइविंग के बाद, खास तौर पर रात्रि के समय, हम थकान महसूस करने लगते हैं, जिससे आमतौर पर हल्की नींद के झटके
all of us. And now I would announce the winners of our Idea Incubation Challenge. So there were 2 prizes. There was a winner prize and there was a runner-up prize. But there was a tie between 2 startups, and we are announcing 2 startups and as for the runner-up prize. The first runner-up startup is Vayon Ideations Private Limited, and the founder's name is Shankar Balasubramaniam. Shankar, are you there? I would request Somjit Amrit sir, Shri Gokul Butel ji, AVM Sinha sir, Shri Sunil Sharma ji to be on stage for the award distribution. Dr. Shubhajit Roy Chaudhary, Professor Syed Abbas, if he's in the auditorium, please join us on the stage for the award distribution. Do we have Shankar here? Yeah. Shankar, please come on stage. Hearty congratulations to you. The runner-up prize is 50,000 rupees. The second runner-up startup is I4 Marine Technologies Private Limited. The founder name is Prakash Khanzade. Prakash, are you there? Yeah. Congratulations, Prakash. Sir, I don't have that information handy with me. Maybe they can describe about the startups.
Maybe I can say a word.
Yeah, you can talk about it.
We are I4 Marine Technologies based out of Pune. And recently we developed underwater and over surface autonomous marine technologies. And with this pitch, we have applied for funding to make this hardware system that we have made into an intelligent and highly useful technology asset for government as well as non-governmental applications. Very simple things like identifying underwater objects. Police have asked us to develop this technology to make use for identifying either smuggled object or smuggled object, dead bodies, and also for dam rehabilitation and another major application is conducting tests and surveys underwater for checking dam health, whether the dams are in good condition, whether this major repairs are required. And right now there is no technology completely integrated in this way. That's what our pitch was actually. Thank you.
For the first prize announcement, I would request all our jury members also to please come on stage as well. All jury members, KBR sir, Balamurlidhar sir, Siddharth, Mr. Sameer Dutt, Venkatadri sir. And the first prize goes to startup Charna Labs, and the founder name is Raksha Rao. Ms. Raksha Rao, please come on stage. Congratulations, Charna Labs. Gokul sir, please. Do you want me to hold it?
Thank you so much. My startup Charana Labs is working on a product called Immersive India, where we are bringing the best of Indian culture, heritage, and nature through the beautiful immersive medium of VR headsets. That's what we do. Thank you so much. Thanks for the opportunity.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Yes, please. Yeah, Vyant Ideations Private Limited, Shankar would like to describe his startup.
Hello everyone. So we have AI and Ideations. So our product is for VR locomotion. Currently, VR locomotion is done using a very unintuitive way, using controllers and joysticks. So we have developed a product which you can attach to the footwear of what you're wearing and be able to naturally walk in VR. Thank you.
Thank you, Shankar. I have now the crossword winners list in my hand. We received around 40 applications and results sheets for this, and we have decided to give and award prizes to the top 10. So I'll announce the names. Please come on stage. The prize for each winner is cash prize of 1,000 rupees plus a book plus gift vouchers from Hover Robotics. So the first name is Prathamesh Singh. Prathamesh, hurry up, hurry up. The second one is Amit Chaudhary. Pratyush Kishan. All are School of Management students. Payal. Please proceed with the prizes. Gokul sir. The cash prizes can be collected from the iHub office on Monday. We will get in touch with you. After Payal, we have Naksh Sehra. Ashutosh Mishra. Utsav Sheth. Abhinav Tiwari. Vishal. Siddhant Oberoi. These are the 10 winners of our crossword puzzle. Yeah, please go ahead. Those who are not around, their friends can, collect on their behalf. Or everybody has received their prize. I'll call out the names again. Prathamesh, Amit Chaudhary, Pratyush Kishan, Payal, Naksh Sehra, Ashutosh Mishra, Utsav Seth, Abhinav Tiwari, Vishal, and Siddhant Oberoi. Okay. Thank you very much, and congratulations to all the winners. Thank you, sir. Thank you, gentlemen. And with this, I invite Dr. Shubhajit Roy Chaudhary to give a vote of thanks.
So from a silent valley to a busy, bustling IIT Mandi campus, from a grazing field to a township full of structures, infrastructures, and manpower, this Kaman Valley has seen a dramatic change over the past 15 years, and it was in this part of this developmental endeavor that we had the development of IIT Mandi, iHub, and HCI Foundation, which is a Section 8 industry. So today we have assembled here to close the second version of the Hive. We had the first version of Hive at AeroCity at Delhi last year, last year rather. It was held in November, and this year it's January. So it's my responsibility, it's my formality to offer thanks to all the contributors. Firstly, I must acknowledge the support lent by our Honorable Director, Professor Lakshmidhar Behera, who has been a mastermind and a guide and support all along with respect to organization of the Hive. He, in fact, in spite of his busy schedule, managed his time to come and welcome all the guests and delegates yesterday. I must thank first the main person behind the show, Mr. Somjit Amrit, who has been guiding all the people, the team iHub, for the last 1.5 months in terms of contacting the delegates, contacting the iHub team, and coordinating with the entire team, coordinating with the faculty members at IIT Mandi, tirelessly to make this event come to fruition. I must thank Mrs. Volga Verma, Mr. Abhinandan, Mr. Avnish, Mr. Naveen, Mr. Deepak, Mr. Dushant, Dr. Kulbhushan, Dr. Pooja Sharma, and many others. It's a long list. Ms. Sonmati, Printi, Anjana, so many names to mention. It's countless. I must thank all of them for their relentless support and working beyond the office hours to make this event a success. I must thank my colleagues at IIT Mandi, who are the affiliate faculty members, to contribute to the event in different ways. My friend and colleague Arnav was a part of the panel discussion yesterday. And apart from that, there were other colleagues also who helped us in different ways. If I mention the name, it will be a long list. I must thank all the speakers and resource persons who shared their views, who shared their intellectual thoughts and ideas. It was really a wonderful experience to listen to most of the lectures. And I must expect that those who couldn't make out delivered lectures in an online mode, it's my expectation that they should turn up in person next time. It actually gives a much better experience to have the lecture in person, because after the lecture we always have a tea break or a networking lunch or a networking dinner that actually helps in establishing relationship, connectivity, and whatever. Thanks are due to the team Samsung, especially Dr. Balvinder Singh ji, Dr. Lokesh, Dr. Pavan, who actually, apart from their commitment towards delivering lecture, connected with us at IIT Mandi in terms of the PRISM program, and we promise to deliver your needs of the lab with respect to the problems that you were discussing about through active engagements of our faculty colleagues and students in due course. I must thank all the jury members of the startup evaluation team. Dr. Muralidhar, Bala Muralidhar is there, Mr. KB Rajendran is there, and other members, including Mr. Siddharth Kanungo, Mr. Samir Dutt, Mr. Avnish Mishra, who tirelessly evaluated a lot of teams for the last couple of days, last 2 days, and we have been able to announce the results. And we also like to see some tangible outcomes of the startups in the days to come. I must thank our Minister in State for Skill Development, Mr. Rajesh Dharmani, who, in spite of his busy schedule, came here yesterday and enlightened the gathering. Let me also thank Srimati Rakhil Kehlon and Dr. Shrivari Chandrasekhar and other eminent personalities who enlightened the gathering yesterday. Last but not the least, let me thank Mr. Gokul Butel, who came up, and he also promised us a lot of things. We are looking forward to your kind and generous support in the days to come, and Mr. Sunil Sharma also. And we would like to remain connected with you and be blessed with your generous support in the days to come. And we hope that if the IIT Mandi and the ministry, they work together in unison, lot of interesting things can happen, and together we can transform this state into one of the best in our country. Let us all take the pledge of working together as a single team and transform this state into one of the best in the country. With this, I declare the Hive 2 as closed, and we all invite you to join the lunch at the fountain area.
Thank you, Shubhajit sir, and thank you for your support as a project director. This is commendable. It is so good to have you in our team and working together. I would now call upon all my team members of TIH, interns, volunteers on stage, please quickly come on stage. And all our guest speakers, experts, to also join us on stage. We can have a group picture. I would kindly request Shri Gokul Butelji, Mr. Sunil Sharma, AVM Sinha sir, Somjit sir to be on stage for a group picture. All the speakers, experts kindly join us on the stage. All my TIH members, my team members. Professor Abbas, if you're, yes, kindly join us. Dr. Satinder Sharma, kindly join us on stage. A huge round of applause for TIH team members who worked tirelessly to make this event and conclave possible.